Harald Sigurdsson, known in later sagas as Harald Hardrada, was born around 1015 in Ringerike, Norway. His mother, Åsta Gudbrandsdatter, was the daughter of the powerful chieftain, and his father, Sigurd Zir, was a petty king of Ringerike. This lineage, although adorned with mythical embellishments, positioned Harald within the intricate tapestry of Norway's noble families. He was the youngest of three half-brothers to King Olaf Haraldsson, whose trajectory would intertwine significantly with Harald's own. In his formative years, Harald displayed traits of ambition and prowess befitting a warrior heavily influenced by his half-brother Olaf, who sought to regain the Norwegian throne lost to the Danish king Cnut the Great. This pursuit would embroil the brothers in a series of endeavors against Knut's forces. The significant episode of their rebellion came in 1030 during the Battle of Stiklestad, which aimed to restore Olaf to power after his exile following Knut's ascension. At only 15 years of age, Harald fought violently alongside Olaf. Despite their valor, the brothers faced defeat, leading to Olaf's death and Harald's near-fatal injuries. With the political winds shifting against him, Harald found himself fleeing to the Kievan Rus. In Kievan Rus, Harald was embraced by the Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise, who recognized the potential of the young warrior. Harald took command of a band of warriors, quickly establishing himself as a capable military leader, participating in various campaigns against neighboring adversaries including the Pechenegs and the Jutes of Estonia. His military exploits soon captured the attention of the Byzantines, and around 1034 he ventured to Constantinople, the heart of an empire steeped in riches and power. In Constantinople, Harald joined the famed Varangian Guard, an elite unit comprised primarily of Norse warriors that acted as the emperor's personal bodyguards. His reputation as a skilled fighter grew in this new setting, and he participated in numerous military campaigns across the empire's many frontiers. His early involvements included combat against Arab pirates in the Mediterranean, where the Varangian Guard sought to safeguard trade routes and coastal cities from threat. Harald's exploit took him to the heights of Asia Minor, where he contributed to the expulsion of the Arabs from significant territories, and possibly further east into Mesopotamia. His military career in the Byzantine Empire reached a pinnacle during the campaigns in Sicily, as part of an effort to reclaim the island from the Islamic Saracens. Harald fought alongside Norman mercenaries in these operations, where he allegedly captured 4 towns. However, as a significant soldier in the Byzantine ranks, he also later found himself embroiled in the Longobard-Norman battles in southern Italy, where political loyalties shifted and trust was easily broken. The Byzantine campaigns against the Normans ultimately proved unsuccessful. Several significant battles occurred amid political turmoil within the empire, and Harald was recalled to Constantinople in the wake of these struggles. Through his military successes, Harald amassed considerable wealth, which he cunningly sent back to Kievan Rus for safekeeping under Yaroslav's protection. His fortunes swelled from not only victories on the battlefield, but also from participating in the imperial palace plunder, where wealth was liberated amid the tumult of regime changes. During this time, Harald developed a theory of kingship that revolved around strength and visible prowess in battle, forming the basis for his later pursuits of power. After spending roughly a decade in Byzantine service and enriching himself through his ventures, Harald returned Kievan Rus around 1042. His marriage to Elisif, the daughter of Yaroslav, further solidified his ties with the realm, enhancing his legitimacy. Soon he began contemplating a return to Norway to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his, the throne usurped from his half-brother Olaf. By the mid-1040s, the political landscape in Scandinavia had shifted dramatically. The remnants of Danish supremacy were waning as Magnus the Good, the illegitimate son of Olaf, had taken control of Norway. Magnus had been recognized as king of Denmark, as well as defeating Sweyn Estrid's son, a rival claimant. With an eye on the throne, Harald sought alliances to support his ambitions. He met with Sweyn in Denmark, and after a series of raids against Danish settlements, he and Magnus reached compromise in 1046, sharing the kingship with Magnus reigning as the senior king, while Harald commanded considerable influence. This uneasy balance struck a precarious stability in Norway, and Harald began to consolidate his power. Following Magnus' unexpected death in 1047, Harald declared himself King of Norway. His reign commenced amidst the backdrop of fierce ambitions. He was determined to reclaim control over Denmark, seeking to re-establish Cnut's North Sea Empire. The years that followed were marked by ceaseless raiding along the Danish coasts, where Harald sought to break Sweyn's forces, garner loyalty from the Danish populace, and extend his sovereignty. His campaigns bore fruit, with instances of both success in plundering and garnering support, but the pivotal victory over Sweyn eluded him, leaving Denmark unconquered. During these tumultuous times, political complexities deepened with the arrival of Tostig Godwinson, brother of the English king Harald Godwinson. Tostig aligned himself with Harald, urging him to make a claim on the English throne, a step that would bring Harald's saga into the annals of English history. Harald accepted Tostig's invitation, seeing it as an avenue to further assert his ambition. Collecting an impressive force, he launched an invasion of England in September 1066, landing near York with his allies and taking the strategic advantage in the region. In the ensuing Battle of Fulford, he decisively defeated the local forces of Northumbria and Mercia, further solidifying his control in the area. However, this ascendant moment for Harald was short-lived. News of his incursion reached Harald Godwinson, who hastily marched northward from the south with an army that would soon challenge Harald's supremacy. On September the 25th, as Harald prepared to meet citizens of York at Stamford Bridge to discuss terms of administration, Harald caught him by surprise, leading to the pivotal showdown that would seal Harald's fate. Despite initial preparations, the Norwegians were unready for the fierce battle that was now upon them, and the chaos unfolded rapidly. In this brutal encounter, Harald Hardrada faced Harald Godwinson's well-trained army. The skirmish became one of bloodshed and chaos. Conflict arose not merely from tactical prowess, but from sheer resolve and desperation. In the thick of the melee, Harald was ultimately struck down, likely by an arrow to the throat, his reign extinguished in that fateful battle. Sagas recount the valor displayed by Harald and the fierce resistance offered by his troops, but the numerical superiority and the strategic leverage of Harald's forces prevailed. With Harald's death at Stamford Bridge, his ambition, once soaring high, met a violent end, and the Viking Age itself is often regarded as concluding with this definitive moment. Harald Godwinson would face his own fate mere weeks later at the Battle of Hastings, as the fates of kingdoms shifted once more. Rollo, known in the Norse sagas as Hrolfr, emerged as a formidable figure in the tumultuous landscape of the late 9th century. Born around the mid-30s of the 9th century in Scandinavia, though the exact locality of his birth remains uncertain, he was likely of noble lineage, possibly with roots in Denmark or Norway. The historical chronicles are relatively sparse regarding his early life, but they do suggest a warrior trained in the traditions of the Viking way, characterized by seasonal raids and the pursuit of land. By the time Rollo was drawn into the events of the European continent, he had already gained a reputation as a fierce leader among the Norsemen. The earliest documented action involving Rollo reflects a period already marked by Viking prowess. He is associated with the siege of Paris in 885-86, during which an alliance of warriors sought to capitalize on the political weakness of the Frankish realm. Otto of France rallied troops to defend the city against this onslaught, successfully repulsing Rollo and his forces. This episode illustrated the ongoing strife between the expanding Frankish territories and the assertive Viking groups that sought to establish a foothold in northern France. Despite failing to capture Paris, this raid heralded a broader intention among the Norse to settle down rather than merely pillage, indicating a shift in strategy that would come to fruition under Rollo's rule. By the early 10s of the 10th century, Rollo had redirected his ambitions towards establishing control over the Sand River Valley, particularly focusing on the significant city of Rouen. His ascendance was notably marked by the siege of Chartres in 911, a decisive moment that would shift the balance of power in favor of the Norse settlers. Charles the Simple, the king of West Francia, recognized the futility in ongoing hostility with Rollo's raiders. Hence, he sought to negotiate a settlement that would establish a sense of order and protect his realm from further incursions. In the Treaty of Saint-Clair-sur-Epte, a pivotal agreement was forged that granted Rollo lands from the river Epte to the sea, a zone that included the heart of Normandy. In return, Rollo was required to renounce his brigandage, pledge fealty to Charles, and convert to Christianity. The baptism represented a significant transformation, as Rollo took the name Robert, symbolizing his newfound role as a Christian lord. This act of conversion, however, was not merely a personal milestone. It served to legitimize his leadership among both his Viking followers and the local Frankish populace who needed assurance of stability. The treaty reflected a profound change within the Viking ethos, as Rollo transitioned from a maraudeur to a land-holding noble who would govern rather than plunder. Rollo's strategic marriage to Poppa of Bayeux, the daughter of a prominent local count, further solidified his integration into the existing power system of Gaul. The legitimacy of their union has sometimes been scrutinized, as the historical accounts of Dude of Saint-Quentin were often colored with his own romantic notions of lineage and nobility. Nonetheless, Poppa bore Rollo a son, William Longsword, who would inherit the mantle of leadership and further shape the destiny of Normandy. This blending of Norse and Frankish bloodlines marked the beginning of a new cultural identity, as their descendants came to be known as Normans, a people who would come to redefine their place within the context of European history. Rollo's governance of Normandy lasted for nearly 2 decades, during which he effectively established his authority and ensured the protection of the lands allocated to him. His leadership was characterized by the consolidation of power among the various Viking leaders who had established territories in the region, creating a more unified and stable realm. By dividing the lands among his chieftains, Rollo demonstrated a political acumen that helped forge alliances and suppress potential rivalries among the various factions of Norse settlers. The historical tapestry of this period reflects Rollo's dual dedication to both his Viking roots and his obligations to the Frankish king. The practical implications of Rollo's rule are also extended to military preparedness. Under his leadership, Normandy transformed into a bastion against further Viking incursions, while serving as a base for consolidating Frankish authority in the area. Rollo organized his forces to respond to threats from rival Viking chieftains in Brittany and the Cotentin Peninsula, ensuring that Normandy would not merely survive but thrive amidst the rivalries that characterized this era. He adeptly navigated political dynamics, maintaining loyalty among his warriors while fostering relations with local communities, thus amplifying the influence of the Norman presence. Around the mid-20s of the 10th century, the political landscape began shifting once more, as Charles the Simple lost his influence and was deposed, leading to further territorial disputes. Rollo's strategic importance became clearer as he and his forces pledged support to Charles' successor, Rudolf, in his efforts to reclaim the throne from usurpers. This demonstrated Rollo's awareness of the shifting political tides, as he positioned himself and his lineage as pivotal players in the local power dynamic. As Rollo's life neared its end, so did the chapter of his direct rule. He likely passed away between 928 and 933, leaving behind a burgeoning duchy that would flourish under his son William Longsword. Rollo's burial at the Rouen Cathedral solidified his enduring connection to the land he fought to claim and govern. The legacy of Rollo traversed generations, with his descendants continuing to shape the history of Normandy and beyond. This lineage ultimately produced figures such as William the Conqueror, whose actions in 1066 changed the course of England's history forever. Born around the year 990, Cnut the Great emerged from a lineage of notable Scandinavian rulers, tracing his descent to Sweyn Forkbeard, and further back to Harald Bluetooth, the king credited with the Christianization of Denmark. Knut's early years remained shrouded in uncertainty. But it is believed he received military training under prominent leaders such as Thorkel the Tall. As a prince, Cnut witnessed his father Sweyn conduct campaigns against England, foreshadowing his own ambitions for the English crown. In 1013, Sweyn Forkbeard successfully seized control of England, briefly claiming kingship after the flight of Ethelred the Unready to Normandy. This incursion marked a significant moment in Viking history, illustrating the continuing impact of Norse raiding in Britain. However, Sweyn's reign was short-lived as he died in February 1014. In the wake of his death, the Viking army proclaimed Cnut, still a young man, as their king in England, although the English nobility quickly thrust Ethelred back onto the throne. With Ethelred's restoration marking a setback for Cnut, he returned to Denmark, but his aspirations remained intact. In 1015, Cnut resolved to reclaim his position, assembling a formidable force comprising seasoned warriors from across Scandinavia. His fleet, approximately 200 longships strong, set sail for England, determined to assert his claim amidst the ongoing political rivalry. Cnut's campaign commenced in September 1015, with his forces landing at Sandwich, harrying the south of England with a vigor not seen since the days of Alfred the Great. His invasion was marked by rapid brutalities across Wessex as he sought to carve out his domain. With cunning strategy, Cnut capitalized on discontent within Ethelred's ranks. Edric Streona, the ealdorman of Mercia, defected to Cnut, bolstering his campaign with additional ships and troops, while Thorkel the Tall also shifted allegiance, bringing his considerable reputation and fighting force to Cnut's banner. The ensuing year involved a relentless push through southern and eastern England, with engagements against forces loyal to Ethelred's son, Edmund Ironside. Cnut's military tactics prevailed in a series of engagements marked by significant battles that drew upon the loyalty and fierce determination of his Viking warriors. His advance into critical territories like London and Wessex represented not only military successes but the consolidation of power, as he negotiated with local nobles and utilized his prevailing influence to enforce allegiance. In April 1016, with Ethelred's death, the struggle for power intensified. After a short-lived alliance, Cnut faced a formidable opponent in Edmund Ironside, the newly elected king who sought to reclaim the throne for the English. Their rivalry deepened, culminating in various engagements that demonstrated the ferocity and desperation on both sides. Cnut's forces were marked by their ruthlessness, and the military engagements bore witness to the harsh realities of the era. The pivotal moment arrived at the Battle of Assendon in October 1016. It was here that the dynamics shifted irrevocably. Cnut's forces, benefiting from greater cohesion and experience, ultimately triumphed over Edmund's. This victory granted Cnut an overwhelming advantage, leading to a negotiation that saw a split of territory. The north became his domain, while the south remained with Edmund under the terms of a reluctant agreement. However, tragedy soon struck when Edmund tragically cut down shortly thereafter, left space for Cnut to claim the crown unopposed. By 1017, Cnut was crowned King of England. His rule marked a significant turning point for the kingdom as he sought to unify the disparate cultures of Danes and Anglo-Saxons under a common banner. Cnut's reign aimed to stabilize England's finances and protect its coasts from other Viking encroachments. He initiated a series of sweeping reforms that emphasized the importance of loyalty among the English nobility, while expanding the power of the central monarchy. Cnut's marriage to Emma of Normandy, Ethelred's widow, not only solidified his claim, but established a political alliance that further legitimized his rule. Following his coronation, Cnut focused on consolidating power over his territories. His wealth was significantly bolstered by a danegeld, a tax levied on the English population, which garnered immense resources to maintain a standing army, enabling him to keep potential rivals in check. Administratively, Cnut improved upon the existing systems of government, dividing England into extensive earldoms governed by trusted earls and gradually integrating capable Anglo-Saxon leaders who commanded local loyalty. Such moves facilitated a semblance of stability as rival factions were absorbed into his governance. In Denmark, Cnut's authority was similarly asserting following the death of his brother Harald in 1018. Cnut returned to Denmark to affirm his newfound power, putting down any remnants of dissent. His military campaigns now extended into Norway, where he began to assert influence over the fragmented regions. By 1028, emboldened by his successes in England, Cnut launched an expedition to Norway. His forces outmaneuvered King Olaf Haraldsson, whose reputation as a stern ruler alienated many of his nobles. Crowning himself in Trondheim, Cnut solidified his claim to Norway, marking a culmination of his ambitions to unite the North Sea territories under his rule. The consolidation of power over this vast territory was not without its challenges. Cnut, striving to cope with cultural divides, navigated the delicate balance of enforcing order while allowing for local customs to flourish. His reign saw an emphasis on the Christianization of Scandinavia, which was propelled by his marriage and alliances, but also reflected a genuine desire for religious unity. After discussions with the Church, Cnut reinforced ties with Rome, organizing pilgrimages and promoting ecclesiastical influence within his territories, thereby legitimizing his power in the eyes of Christendom. During his rule, Cnut maintained a focus on ensuring maritime security throughout the North Sea. This era represented a period of relative peace from external Viking threats, allowing him to foster robust trade networks while advocating for judicial reforms and benefiting local economies. The infrastructural advancements of the peaceful interactions between Anglo-Saxons and Danes served to integrate populations, promoting cultural exchange. Legal codes were revived and adapted to reflect both Viking and Anglo-Saxon traditions, showcasing an administrative wisdom that affirmed Cnut's image as a just and effective ruler. The period of the 30s of the 11th century witnessed further consolidation of Cnut's power. His success in subduing regions within Scandinavia entrenched his reputation, and the reverence held for him by the nobility was palpable during official gatherings, where acoustic verses crafted by scouts lauding his virtues and accomplishments filled the halls. Cnut's reign and legacy became deeply entwined with the emergence of a cultural renaissance, as arts and literature flourished amid his courts. As external threats dwindled, Cnut turned his efforts to diplomatic strategies interacting with neighboring lands. His notable journey to Rome in 1027 to attend the coronation of the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad II exemplified his diplomatic engagement and solidified alliances through personal interactions with European powers. The king's diplomatic ventures and travel emphasized his role as a leading figure across broader Christendom, connecting the northern realms to Central Europe through marriage and political alliances. Later, as Cnut ventured the western seas, he endeavored to secure submission from regional powers without overt military action. By 1031, Cnut was able to receive the submission of several Scottish kings, a testament to his expanded influence in strategic diplomacy. Though he exerted nominal authority over their lands, the potential for sustained influence across Scotland proved transient, as local loyalties often shifted with the winds of political currents. Not long thereafter, the culmination of Cnut's reign was marred by internal strife as he endeavored to secure his legacy. The duality of his rule saw moments of both ferocity and benevolence. While he maintained a strong hand, he also lavished attention on ecclesiastical endeavors, expanding churches and supporting monastic institutions. His relationship with the church, complex and oftentimes contradictory, reflected his need to maintain legitimacy across his kingdoms. Though he ruled with an iron fist at times, Cnut also exhibited signs of humility, particularly in how he addressed his subjects. The story of him ordering his throne placed at the shore only to be overtaken by the rising tide illustrates a king aware of his place within the grand workings of the universe, reflecting the philosophical perspectives prevalent among rulers of his time. Cnut's reign remained significant until his death on November the 12th, 1035, in Shaftesbury, marking the end of an era characterized by vast territorial expansion, cultural synthesis, and political adaptation. Upon his death, the succession of his kingdoms fell into question. In England, his son Artacnut assumed the throne but faced immediate challenges, while the delicate balance Cnut had struck was quickly threatened by the ambitions of local factions and the aspirations of rival claimants. Denmark encountered similar turmoil, emphasizing the precarious nature of the empire Cnut had sought to forge. Harald Fairhair, or Harald Hardrada in Old Norse, was born around the year 850 and would come to be regarded as the first king of a unified Norway. His reign, which is traditionally dated from approximately 872 until 930, is steeped in legend and myth. The historical records of Harald's life emerges primarily from medieval sagas penned centuries after his death, particularly the writings of Snorri Sturluson and other chroniclers in the 12th and 13th centuries. As a result, while his life is enshrined in the narrative of Norway's formation, the veracity of many details remains unavoidable, shrouded in uncertainty. Harald was born into the Yngling dynasty, with his father being Halfdan the Black, a ruler of several petty kingdoms in Vestfold. His mother, Ragnhild, was of noble lineage, further entrenching Harald in a powerful network of alliances. His early life was marked by the unstable politics of Norway's fragmented landscape, filled with rival chieftains and divided loyalties. Upon his father's death, when Harald was still a youth, he inherited scattered territories. His mother's brother, Guthrum, became his protector and regent, providing him with guidance as he navigated the complexities of rule. The defining moment of Harald's early kingship came with the events that surrounded his pursuit of Gyda, the daughter of a local king in Hordaland. Upon being rebuffed by Gyda, who declared she would not marry a man who was not king over all of Norway, Harald vowed to unify the land. This vow would shape the course of his ambitions and led him into a series of military undertakings aimed at establishing his dominion over the diverse and often antagonistic kings of Norway. As he set about making good on his vow, Harald began a series of campaigns to consolidate power, engaging rival kings and their forces in a calculated series of martial actions. One of the most notable of these was the decisive Battle of Hafrsfjord, fought around 872. This battle is traditionally recognized as a cornerstone of his campaign to unify Norway, where he faced the forces of Cnut the Great and Aklag. According to the sagas, Harald's victory not only marked a turning point in his military career, but also symbolized the transformation of his status from a petty king to that of a sovereign over a cohesive realm. With each victory, he gathered more warriors to his banner, many of whom were drawn by the promise of plunder and the potential for land and titles under his new regime. In the years that followed, Harald's ambitious military pursuits did not abruptly cease after Hafrsfjord. He set out to subdue various regions, expanding his influence far beyond Vestfold. Historical accounts suggest that Harald's campaigns included forays in neighboring territories of Sweden and the area known as Värmland, perhaps as means of exerting control and securing tributary relationships with other regional powers. His conquests led him to the uplands and eventually down to Trondheim, establishing a network of alliances through marriages and political arrangements. Notably, his marriage to Åsa, the daughter of Håkon Grotgardsson, a prominent Jarl of Trondheim, solidified his control over that critical area. Harald's imposition of taxation and centralized authority transformed the landscape of scorned liberties into one of loyalty forged by reward and profit. With a systematic approach to governance, he elevated select jarls and local leaders who displayed loyalty, allowing them to oversee continued control over various regions as long as tribute and military support flowed to his court. This approach, while effective for consolidating power, also bred resentment among those who were unwilling to submit to his rule, leading many affluent chieftains to seek refuge in the newly discovered lands of Iceland and other distant regions. The familial dynamics that marked Harald's later reign were as tumultuous as the military campaigns of his youth. He fathered many children, and while records often vary regarding the exact number, it is acknowledged that he had at least a dozen sons, several of whom would become kings in their own right. Among his offspring, Eirik Bloodaxe is often noted for his fierce temperament and military acumen alongside Håkon the Good, celebrated for his more benevolent nature. The differing personalities and ambitions of his sons would become a significant source of strife as they matured, sowing the seeds for power struggles that would ripple through the lineage of Norwegian rulers. The later years of Harald's reign were riddled with political rivalry among his sons, testing the foundations of his rule. Eirik Bloodaxe, favored by Harald and viewed as his successor, began ruling alongside his father as Harald entered the twilight of his reign. Eirik's harsh methods in governance often drew criticism and fear among the populace and even among his brothers, leading to mounting tensions and apprehensions regarding his rule. Seeking to assert his authority, Eirik led various military actions against rival factions, further entrenching the instability that came with succession crises. As Harald grew older, the fabric of his kingdom was increasingly troubled by the ambitions of his sons. The narratives describe episodes where Eirik, in his quest for dominance, directed brutal acts against his half-brothers and their followers, which generated waves of unrest. Land was fought over, blood was spilled, and the ambition of the younger generation mirrored that of their father, often leading to violent and self-destructive outcomes. Notably, Halfdan Longleg, another of Harald's sons, engaged in acts of treachery leading to their father taking a decisive hand, often resolving disputes through the harsh enforcement of his royal will. Despite the strife at the end of his reign, Harald managed to leave behind a legacy that would resonate through the ages. His death, traditionally dated around 933, was marked by the semblance of a kingdom, untrammeled by external foes, but internally rife with familial discord. Harald was buried in a mound at Haugesund, said to be a site rich with historical significance, thereby cementing his place in the historical consciousness of Norway. The monument built to commemorate him captures the ethos of a nation grappling with its own identity and beginning, as it sought, to separate itself from Swedish rule centuries later. Sweyn Forkbeard was born on April 17, 963, as the son of King Harald Bluetooth, a significant figure in Scandinavia who united the Danes and is known for his conversion to Christianity, and a woman believed to be named Gunhild. Following Harald's baptism, Sweyn was given the Christian name Otto, reflecting his father's ties to the broader Christian world, particularly the influence of the German king Otto I. This early exposure to power and faith shaped Sweyn's identity and future ambitions. In the mid-80s of the 10th century, driven by the desire for sovereignty and possibly influenced by the growing pagan sentiment among certain factions in Denmark, Sweyn revolted against his father. This rebellion culminated in Harald's expulsion from Denmark, forcing him into exile, where he eventually died, possibly in the years following 986. Sweyn's ascendance to the throne marked a significant shift in Danish leadership and set the stage for his complex relationships with neighboring kingdoms, particularly Norway and England. While Sweyn ruled Denmark, he sought to expand his influence over Norway, which had been partially claimed by his father Harald Bluetooth. By the year 1000, he had fostered alliances with powerful figures such as Erik, Earl of Lade, promoting a strong military coalition against the reigning Norwegian king Olaf Tryggvason. The burgeoning tension led to the notable Battle of Svolder, which occurred in September 999 or 1000. In this battle, Sweyn, along with his allies, successfully confronted Olaf, inflicting a decisive defeat that resulted in the division of Norway among the victors. Sweyn reclaimed control over the Viken district, and the victory established him as a potent rival within the region, solidifying his influence. Sweyn's shifting allegiances and political diplomacy were reflected in his approach to religion, recognizing the growing importance of Christianity in consolidating power he systematically recruited English priests and bishops into his court, a move that diverged from the traditional ties to the Archbishopric of Bremen. This choice may have been both a cultural and political maneuver designed to reinforce his independence from Germanic influence, fostering a distinctly Scandinavian Christian culture while simultaneously appealing to his Christian subjects. His preference for English ecclesiastics also underscored deeper connections established through trade and Viking networks with the Danelaw, where Danish influence was already strong. However, Sweyn's ambitions extended beyond Norway. His involvement in England began earnestly after the St. Brice's Day massacre in 1002, during which many Danes living in England were executed under the orders of Ethelred the Unready. This event likely became a rallying point for Sweyn, leading him to orchestrate a series of raids on English territories from 1002 through 1012. The raids, while politically motivated, were also driven by the potential for plunder and tribute, as Sweyn sought to capitalize on the vulnerabilities of Ethelred's reign amid growing resentment among the populace towards the king. Sweyn's campaigns against England saw him initially focus on Wessex and East Anglia, but adverse conditions like famine forced him to retreat. Nevertheless, he continued his endeavors, launching further invasions in 1006 and 1009, capitalizing on the ensuing chaos and instability in England. By 1013, he prepared for a comprehensive invasion, landing in Sandwich with a formidable fleet. His forces proceeded to navigate through East Anglia and into the Humber, where they encountered little resistance as local leaders and towns rapidly submitted to his rule. Historically, Sweyn's ability to command submission from earls and the populace was remarkable, particularly in Northumbria, where he was met with an immediate show of loyalty. The swift allegiance snowballed, facilitating his advance southward to Oxford and Winchester, where he met with varying degrees of resistance. The most substantial challenges arose in London, where Ethelred and the Viking leader Thorkel the Tall made a determined stand. Often significant efforts to breach the city, Sweyn decided to maneuver towards Bath, where he secured further submission. As his rule over England began to unfold, Sweyn's health waned. However, within the short span of 5 weeks, he managed to establish himself as a king in England. Sweyn's unexpected death on February 3rd, 1014, curbed his ambitions and disrupted the tenuous peace he had crafted. There were varying accounts on the circumstances of his death, with speculation ranging from natural causes to potential assassination, but regardless of the reason, it left the kingdom in a state of uncertainty. Following his death, Sweyn's elder son Harald II ascended the throne of Denmark, while Cnut, his younger son, was declared King of England by factions within the Danelaw. However, this newfound stability was short-lived, as the English nobility sought to reinstate Ethelred to power, resulting in Cnut being driven from England. The political landscape continued to shift, ultimately leading to Cnut's later triumph when he reclaimed the English throne. Sweyn's legacy extended through his lineage. Cnut the Great would go on to become a significant monarch. His reign encompassed not only England but also substantial territories in Scandinavia. Cnut's rule marked the high point of Scandinavian influence over England, and he continued the policies initiated by his father. Sweyn's daughter, Estrid Svensdatter, further tied the lineage into Danish royalty, with descendants continuing to occupy prominent roles in Danish history. Sweyn's marriages, particularly to Gunhild, the widow of Eric of Sweden, and possibly to Sigurd the Haughty, a complex web of alliances emerged, impacting his progeny and cementing alliances through marriage. His children with these influential women included not just Cnut and Harald II, but also several daughters who would intermarry into other royal families, enriching the dynastic ties across kingdoms. Each child carried the weight of their father's ambitions into their endeavors. Eric Thorvaldsson, commonly known as Eric the Red, emerged from a lineage steeped in the complexities of Norse life and culture. Born around the mid-10th century in the Jæren district of Rogaland, Norway, he was the son of Thorvald Asvaldsson, whose fate would significantly influence Eric's trajectory. Thorvald had committed acts of manslaughter that led to his banishment from Norway, a consequence that thrust the family onto a path of exploration. With Eric in tow as a young boy of 10, Thorvald set sail for Iceland, an endeavor that promised a new beginning away from the northern shores of their homeland. Settling in the northwestern region of Iceland, particularly in Ardstrandir, they established a life amidst the rugged terrain. Thorvald, however, would not remain a constant figure in Eric's life. He passed away around 970, leaving Eric to navigate the intricate social dynamics of their new home. As he matured, Eric married Thjodhild, Bjorn's daughter, the daughter of Jorundur Ulfsson and Thorborg Gilsdottir. Together they inhabited a farm in Aukadal, Hauksdale, where they raised a family that would leave its own mark on history. They had 4 children, Freydis, and 3 sons, Leif, Thorvald, and Thorstein. Eric's legacy would pass notably through Leif, who would later undertake his own significant voyages. The narrative of Eric's life was shaped not only by familial relationship, but also by the societal expectations and tensions of the era. Like his father before him, Eric found himself embroiled in fatal disputes. An incident involving his trials led to a series of events that would alter the course of his life. After his trials inadvertently caused a landslide that resulted in the death of men on a neighboring farm owned by Valtov, tensions escalated. Eyjolf the Fool, a close associate of Valtov, killed Eric's thralls in retaliation. Enraged and seeking retribution, Eric took the life of Eyjolf and followed this act by killing Hrafn the Dweller during the ensuing aftermath of these events. The series of actions brought the ire of Eyjolf's kinsmen, culminating in Eric's legal banishment from Aukadar around the year 982, setting him on a path of exploration. This exile became the catalyst for Eric's most crucial undertakings. Seeking refuge and a chance to start anew, he relocated to Brokey and Oxney, where he attempted to reclaim his inherited Stedsaker, ornate pillars of considerable significance originally brought from Norway by his father. The refusal of Thorgest to return the pillars led to another encounter marked by violence, resulting in the deaths of Thorgest's sons at Eric's hands. Such actions propelled Eric further into the sphere of alliances, with his reputation attracting numerous supporters while also creating enemies. Eventually, the ongoing tensions culminated at the Thorsnes Thing, where an official assembly ruled against both Eric and Thorgest, outlawing Eric from Iceland for 3 years. However, Eric was not alone. Many of those who found themselves in his camp chose to join in his ventures. In this newfound state of being an outlaw, Eric prepared for a voyage that would lead him to uncharted lands. He set sail for Greenland around 982, a place that had seen brief visits from earlier Norsemen, including Gunnbjorn Ulfsson and the doomed attempt of Sneborn Galti. Eric's exploration of Greenland was marked by the challenging yet promising landscapes he encountered after rounding Cape Farewell and navigating the western coastline. He found areas that appeared hospitable, with vast stretches of land free from ice and obstructive snow, creating hope for agricultural potential. With careful navigation and exploration, Eric was able to identify potentially viable locations for settlement. During his 3 years of exploration in Greenland, as recounted in the saga of Eric the Red, he spent time on islands such as Eriksay and Eriksolmar, moving further northward to regions like Snæfell and Hrafnsfjord. Each passing season revealed the land's character, from its cold winter months requiring fortitude to its seasons of promise that hinted at bountiful harvests. After fulfilling his exile, Eric returned to Iceland carrying stories that would entice many with the prospect of establishing a new life in Greenland. Strategically, Eric chose to brand the land with a favorable name, acclaiming it Greenland to appeal to potential settlers disillusioned by Iceland's difficulties. The appeal paid off, and upon his return in 985, he led a large expedition that, despite the tragic loss of half of the vessels at sea, succeeded in establishing new colonies. The expedition faced harsh realities, but it marked the beginning of a Norse settlement in Greenland, fundamentally altering the course of Norse exploration and settlement. The settlements were strategically located on the southwestern coast of Greenland, where the climate allowed for some farming and other activities. These were distinguished as the eastern settlement around Qaqortoq and the western settlement near present-day Nuuk. Each settlement nurtured a growing community which Erik led with authority, becoming the paramount chieftain of Greenland. The burgeoning population, reaching around 5,000 inhabitants, included groups escaping Iceland's increasing congestion, seeking new opportunities in the vast untouched land. Erik built a substantial estate called Brattahlid near present-day Narsarsuaq, establishing himself as a figure of importance and prosperity within this newfound society. Under Erik's leadership, the eastern and western settlements flourished, with Norsemen engaging in seasonal hunting expeditions into the harsher climate of Disco Bay for seals, ivory, and walrus tusks, and the resources of beached whales. This provided not only sustenance but essential materials for tools, clothing, and shelter. Throughout Erik's time in Greenland, he remained a staunch follower of Norse paganism, contrasting sharply with his son Leif, who would later venture into Christian realms. The dynamics within his family reflected the greater cultural transformations occurring during this period. Theodild's conversion to Christianity and her efforts to establish a church represented a schism within their household. Erik's adherence to the old gods inevitably led to tensions, particularly as Theodild's resolve deepened. Their personal rift mirrored wider societal shifts and challenges faced by Norse communities during their expansion. As the years progressed, Erik's reputation and influence were still overshadowed by the harsh realities of life in Greenland. His son Leif would embark on journeys across the Atlantic, discovering lands referred to as Vinland in the sagas, yet Erik's own fate was aligned with the emerging threats looming over Greenland. By around 1002, an epidemic swept through the settlements, a grim twist of fate that would strike many settlers, including Erik himself. While he had catalyzed the foundation of a thriving community, the arrival of this epidemic effectively marked the end of Erik the Red's life, his legacy entwined with the land he had bravely settled. Olaf Tryggvason, whose life unfolded during the tumultuous late 10th century, found his beginnings steeped in both tragedy and survival. Born around the 60s of the 10th century, the son of Tryggvi Olafsson, king of Viken, Olaf's early years were marred by the violent deaths of his father at the hands of rivals. To escape the machinations of power that claimed her husband, Olaf's mother, Astrid Eriksdottir, fled with her young son to the Orkney Islands, believed to be a safe haven. Various sagas present differing accounts of his birth, location, and early life, asserting a narrative rich with peril, as they illustrate how Olaf's childhood was a series of desperate journeys. After a few years in Orkney, Astrid ventured further for safety, ultimately making her way to the Kievan Rus. There she sought the protection of her brother Sigurd, a nobleman in the service of Vladimir the Great. The journey across the seas proved fraught with danger, as their ship was captured by Estonian Vikings, leading to Olaf's enslavement at a young age. As the years passed, the young boy endured the brutality of servitude until fortune smiled upon him. A chance encounter with his uncle Sigurd eventually liberated him, bringing him back into the sphere of influence, where he would learn the arts of leadership and warfare. In the court of Vladimir, Olaf's martial capabilities blossomed. He became a trusted commander, showcasing skills that drew admiration and loyalty from his peers. As he grew older, however, Olaf found himself at odds with the political currents at Vladimir's court. The king became increasingly aware of Olaf's popularity and the potential threat he posed. Fearing his tensions, Vladimir turned wary, prompting Olaf's decision to seek his own fortunes beyond the boundaries of Kiev. Setting sail towards the Baltic Sea, Olaf and his men launched in 2 acts of raiding and plunder. It was in the year 982 that he made landfall in Vendland, where fate introduced him to Queen Geira, a woman of formidable character and royal lineage. Olaf's engagement with her marked a turning point in his saga. Their union was built not only on personal affection, but also on political alliances that fortified Olaf's status. As Olaf aided Geira in reclaiming territories that had evaded her authority, his reputation among the Norse elites grew in stature and ambition. Parallel to this personal saga, the broader political landscape began to shift. The Holy Roman Emperor Otto II was rallying forces to combat the Norse pagan Danes, and Olaf saw opportunity. Aligning himself with Otto to underpin his military endeavors with the Christian faith, he joined a grand campaign that culminated in decisive engagements against King Harald Bluetooth and Hakon Jarl of Norway. The victory not only fortified Christian influence, but also displayed Olaf's commitment to the faith, which would later characterize much of his reign in Norway. The passing of Queen Geira cast a shadow over Olaf, propelling him into a cycle of raidings as he sought solace and purpose. His journeys took him across vast stretches of northern territories from Friesland to the Hebrides. A poignant encounter with a seer on the Scilly Isle ignited a transformative moment in his life. The prophetic words of the hermit foretold of Olaf's rise to kingship, promising fame and calling upon him to embrace the Christian faith. It was amidst a mutiny, where he faced dangers from his own men, that he emerged severely injured yet resolute in his transition to Christianity, marking a shift in conviction that would define his future endeavors. Olaf's voyage to England in 988 and his subsequent marriage to Gyda, the widow of an earl, further cemented his growing power. Their union was solidified in the aftermath of a violent dispute, but rather than a mere romantic entanglement, it became a significant alliance among the Norse chieftains in the unfolding landscape of blended kingdoms. In this fertile ground of loyalty and ambition, rumors of a king of Norwegian blood in Ireland precipitated a turning point as Olaf was summoned back to Norway. Upon his return in 995, Olaf faced a kingdom dissatisfied with Jarl Hakon's rule. The strategies employed by Hakon, characterized by heavy-handedness and disregard for the elite factions, had alienated many, creating an environment ripe for Olaf's ascent. With the support of the people, who were increasingly discontent with Hakon's rule, Olaf was declared king. His rule quickly solidified as he mobilized the populace to root out the Jarl, whose tenure ended in ignominy as he died in a pigsty betrayed by his own servant Kark. Olaf's response was swift. He executed Kark for his treason before consolidating his power. With his ascent, Olaf's reign marked an aggressive effort to convert Norway to Christianity. Establishing Trondheim as his capital, he initiated a series of policies that sought functionally to eradicate pagan practices. With fervor typical of his character, he ordered the construction of the first Christian church in Norway, laying a foundation for what he envisioned to be a united Christian Scandinavia. Yet his conversion tactics often strayed into brutality, employing measures of exile, torture, and even execution against the unwilling, showcasing a relentless determination that drew both loyalty and ire. Numerous accounts circulated about Olaf's harsh methods, including notorious incidents involving those who defiantly adhered to their pagan beliefs. Thorleif the Wise, who endured a gruesome punishment, became a symbolic of Olaf's fervent commitment to the Christian cause. Such a force, while momentarily successful in garnering compliance, laid the groundwork for resentment among the populace that remained divided in faith and loyalty. Olaf's undertakings were not limited to Norway. His ambitions extended beyond the fjords, reaching into regions like the Orkney Islands and further afield. Notably, Olaf facilitated the conversion of Leif Erikson, the famed explorer, igniting a mission to spread Christianity to Greenland and beyond. His endeavors were marked by grand visions of an expansive Christian realm, which included alliances through marriage, notably with Thyra, sister of King Sweyn I of Denmark. Their union would carry both personal significance and political implications, deepening the intertwining of interests between Norway and Denmark. However, Olaf's assertive aspirations met their counterpart in developing antagonisms, notably with Sweyn I, whose opposition to Olaf's expansive ambitions brewed rivalries. The relationship with Sigurd the Haughty a lady of notable bloodline in staunch pagan belief, further complicated Olaf's objectives when initial marriage negotiations fell through, igniting her disdain and future quarrels that would manifest as lasting enmity. As Olaf continued to assert dominance over the pagan practices that persisted in Norway, he gradually alienated factions that once supported his reign. His pursuit to unify Scandinavia through faith came at a steep price. Dissent proved against his heavy-handed methods, limiting his support base and exhausting the goodwill among his subjects. In the fateful year of 1000, Olaf set sail once more, driven by both ambition and new marital connections, intent on reclaiming territories linked to his wife Thyra's heritage. The endeavor, however, culminated tragically at the Battle of Svolder, an event that would resonate through history. With his fleet engaged in battle against a combined armada from Denmark, Sweden, and allies loyal to the deposed Hakon, Olaf faced overwhelming odds. Surrounded and outmaneuvered, the outcome turned grim for the king. Elaborate sagas that recount the event present differing narratives on his demise. Some claim he chose to leap into the sea rather than fall captive, taking on an aura of tragic heroism as he disappeared beneath the waves. Others suggest he was assisted or even rescued, introducing a sense of mystery to the final chapter of his life. In the aftermath of his death, legends burgeoned surrounding Olaf Tryggvason, framing him as a martyr of faith and an enduring symbol of the struggle to unite Scandinavia under Christianity. Sightings of him persisted long after the battles of Volder, with various accounts claiming he ventured to distant locales such as Rome and Jerusalem. Ivar the Boneless was born around 787 in Uppsala, Sweden, likely into a world where the sagas of gods and heroes were woven into the fabric of everyday life. As the son of Ragnar Lothbrok, a legendary Viking hero known for his escapades across the seas, and Auslag, a Völva believed to possess clairvoyant gifts, Ivar grew up with the weight of formidable lineage upon his shoulders. His brothers Bjorn Ironside, Halfdan, or Vidserk, Sigurd Snake-in-the-Eye, and Ragnvald were equally thrown into the saga of Viking descent, making their lives a tapestry of ambition, glory, and rivalry. Ivar's peculiar epithet, the Boneless, is shrouded in various interpretations and legends. Some sources suggest he suffered from a skeletal condition that left him unable to walk, while others propose that the term referred to impotence or a more metaphorical absence of strength. According to one particular saga, his condition stemmed from a curse placed on him as a result of a misstep by his mother. Aslo had advised Ragnar to delay their union for 3 nights upon his return from his own military exploit, yet Ragnar, consumed by desire, ignored her wisdom, leading to Ivar's fateful birth. These tales, which are rich in symbolism and mystique, contribute to the enigmatic persona that surrounds Ivar throughout history. In 865, Ivar emerged as a leader of the Great Heathen Army, a formidable force established by the sons of Ragnar to exact vengeance on Ella of Northumbria, who, according to the sagas, had executed their father in a brutal manner. The narrative suggests that Ivar's motivation was not purely revenge. It also reflected a deeper ambition to claim dominion over the fractured kingdoms of the Heptarchy: East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Mercia, Northumbria, Sussex, and Wessex. The Great Heathen Army descended upon England, a meticulously orchestrated venture aimed at exploiting the political fragmentation that characterized this era. Upon arrival, Ivar's cunning quickly became apparent. Before launching a full assault to reclaim their father's honor, he requested a diplomatic meeting with Ella, proposing a deal rather than outright violence. This approach, which may have been rooted in tactical calculation, was designed to give Ivar leverage. He requested land sufficient for him to encompass with an ox hide, a proposal that seemed reasonable but revealed his tactical acumen. Once agreed, Ivar proceeded to slice the hide into fine strips, utilizing them to encircle the fortress of York, which he and his brothers subsequently captured. This innovative strategy, remarkably creative for its time, highlighted Ivar's ability to outthink his adversaries rather than simply overpower them. After capturing York in 867, Ivar's notoriety surged. The city became a pivotal base for the Great Eden Army, providing the necessary resources and manpower for further campaigns across England. In the same year, Ella was captured and, according to legend, underwent the gruesome fate of the Blood Eagle, a purportedly ritualistic method of execution involving the dissection of the rib cage and a theatrical display of the lungs. The veracity of such practice remains debated, with tales serving more to embellish Ivar's fierce reputation than to paint an accurate historical portrait. The year had not yet come to a close when Ivar's ambitions led to the Great Eden Army south into Mercia, where they besieged Nottingham. King Burgred of Mercia, sensing the threat, allied with Ethelred of Wessex to mount a concerted challenge against the invaders. Despite their combined forces, the Anglo-Saxon kings struggled to reclaim Nottingham, resulting in an uneasy stalemate. The Danes remained fortified in York for over a year, utilizing the time for regrouping and strategic planning, while slowly extending their influence in the region. In 869, Ivar again took the lead, turning his attention towards East Anglia, where he encountered King Edmund, known as Edmund the Martyr. Ivar and his forces demanded that Edmund renounce his Christian faith, insisting that he accept the pagan gods of the Norse pantheon. Edmund's refusal led to his capture. The manner of his death, like Ella's, carries a mix of historical truth and legend, but it's clear that Ivar's forces exacted brutal retribution on those who opposed them. The execution of Edmund served to further solidify Ivar's reputation for ruthlessness, positioning him as a potent figure in the power struggles of the late 9th century. The recorded events of Ivar's life came to a close around 873, although he continued to be a dominant player in the unfolding narrative of Viking and Anglo-Saxon interactions. His death is noted by both the Anglo-Saxon chronicle Ethelbert and the Annals of Ulster, which indicate a sudden illness had claimed him. The circumstances surrounding his final days remain cloaked in uncertainty, suggesting the ongoing intrigue of Ivar's life. The fragmentary annals of Ireland reflect on Ivar's passing, recounting a significant lordship that would influence the regions around Dublin and into the Irish Sea, where Viking dominance was taking shape. The discovery of Ivar's alleged burial site in Repton, Derbyshire, adds another layer to his complex legacy. Unearthed as a part of an archaeological dig, the site revealed numerous partial skeletons alongside what is believed to be Ivar's own, indicating a dramatic burial befitting a figure of high status. The narrative surrounding his resting place claims that Ivar had predicted his grave would serve as a barrier to future invaders, instilling a sense of foreboding for those who dared approach. This prophecy resonated through the ages, asserting a supernatural quality to his legacy that both buoyed Viking aspirations and instilled fear in the hearts of their enemies. Ragnar Lothbrok, a figure enshrined in the lore of the Viking Age, emerges from the annals of Norse sagas and poetry, presenting a life intertwined with both historical feats and mythical grandeur. Believed to be born the son of Sigurd the Ring, a king of Sweden, Ragnar's lineage is traced through legendary ancestors, connecting him to the great Scandinavian king Ivar Vidfamne. The echoes of his lineage reverberate through the tales of bravery, cunning, and martial prowess that define his storied existence. His early life, as narrated in myriad sagas, is marked by remarkable feats that showcase his warrior spirit. Among these is the tale of his courtship of Thora Borgarjord. To win her hand, Ragnar confronted the monstrous serpent that guarded Thora's home. This formidable creature, symbolizing chaos and destruction, lay coiled and ready to strike. Yet through cunning and strength, Ragnar vanquished the beast, an act that not only solidified his status as a formidable warrior, but also earned him his first wife and opened the door to numerous offspring. The unusual garb he donned during this battle, shaggy breeches, would lead to his moniker Lothbrok, a term suggesting both his fierce nature and the protective clothing he wore during exploit. With Thora, Ragnar fathered two sons, Erik and Agnar, but after Thora's demise, he sought new ventures and alliances. In a twist of fate, he encountered Kraka, a woman draped in mystery and beauty, who lived under the guise of a peasant girl. Recognizing her wisdom and nobility, Ragnar married her, unaware that she was in truth Aslaug, the daughter of the legendary hero Sigurd Fafnespan. Their union heralded the birth of a formidable lineage, gifting the world with sons destined to carve their names into the saga of the Norse. Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Sigurd Snake-in-the-Eye, and others who would follow in his footsteps as fierce leaders and warriors. Ragnar's vision transcended the simple pleasures of rulership. He sought glory through conquest. As a king with ambitions that stretched across the seas, Ragnar assembled a fleet and an army, setting his sights on the British Isles and the vast territories of the Carolingian Empire. His raids became legendary as he meticulously planned expeditions that struck fear into the hearts of those who ruled the lands he targeted. He is reputed to have initiated these raids with only a small number of ships, a testament to his audacity and confidence in his ability to outmaneuver larger forces. His campaigns were not merely about pillaging, they were strategic ventures aimed at acquiring wealth, land, and prestige, all marks of a successful Viking leader. Ragnar's most notable military endeavor involved a voyage intended to conquer England, a land rich with resources and ripe for plunder. With only 2 ships at his disposal, Ragnar led his men across turbulent waters, embodying the spirit of the Viking seafarers who navigated the storms of the North Sea. Yet fate proved treacherous. He encountered the Northumbrian forces, formidable in their defense of the realm. Underestimating his adversaries, or perhaps overestimating his prowess, Ragnar faced defeat. Captured by King Ella of Northumbria, he was imprisoned and met a harrowing hand thrown into a snake pit to perish amidst venomous serpents. This ultimate betrayal and demise marked a turning point not just in his life but in the legacy he left behind. News of Ragnar's death spread swiftly across the Viking world, igniting a fire within his sons. Determined to avenge their father's cruel fate, they united to form the Great Heathen Army, a formidable force driven by the desire for retribution against King Ella. Under the banner of vengeance, Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, and their brothers orchestrated a systematic campaign against the Northumbrian king, embodying the fierce spirit of their father. They methodically dismantled Ella's defenses, employing their inherited cunning and martial skill, leaving a trail of destruction that would not go unnoticed by history. The saga of Ragnar Lothbrok does not merely rest upon his exploit in battle. It encompasses his relationships and the dynamics of leadership he fostered. His strategic marriages further cemented alliances and expanded his influence across Scandinavia. After his defeat and demise, his sons, wielding both his legacy and their own burgeoning reputations, established dominions marking significant territories within England. Ivar, renowned for his tactical brilliance, led the charge into Northumbria, while Bjorn extended his reach into other lands, ensuring that their father's name echoed in the halls of power. Bjorn Ironside, known as Bjorn Jarmseta in Old Norse, was a figure deeply woven into the fabric of Viking history and legend, born in the turbulent 9th century as a son of the renowned King Ragnar Lothbrok. His lineage was not just notable for its royal beginnings, but also imbued with tales of bravery and conquest, reflecting the spirit of the times when Norse warriors sought both wealth and glory across distant shores. His life can be retraced through a melange of sources, historical accounts, sagas, and chronicles that chronicle his remarkable exploit, military strategies, and eventual rise as the first monarch of the Munso dynasty in Sweden. The annals of history first catch glimpses of Bjorn in the summer of 855, when he emerged from his father's shadow and set sail from Denmark with a considerable fleet, showcasing his ambition and tactical prowess. Having been the younger son, Bjorn was compelled to seek his fortune beyond the confines of his homeland, a common practice among the sons of kings in Norse culture, intended to fortify the ruling authority by dispersing potential claimants to the throne. This led him to West Francia, where he aligned with fellow Viking chieftain Sigtrygg, forming an alliance that would lead them to raid the rich lands along the Seine River. Bjorn's exploits were not without resistance. In 855, their advance was met by Charles the Bald, who rallied his forces to counter the Viking threat. Initial skirmishes brought highlights to Bjorn's tactical ingenuity, and his forces launched raids and struck terror into the hearts of the Franks, who were becoming increasingly aware of the Norsemen's ferocity and cunning. Though Bjorn and Sigtrygg's combined efforts were thwarted in the Champagne region, that same year they managed to regroup, and Bjorn's tenacity shone through. His ferocious spirit led him to establish a fortified base on the island of Wassel, which he utilized as a launching pad for further incursions into the region. Wintering on Gival's grave, he prepared for a robust offensive against Pairs. The Norsemen seized control of the city, plundering its riches and cementing their reputation as formidable seafarers and warriors who could unsettle even the strongest of defenses. By 856, Charles the Bald was compelled to confront Bjorn directly with his full might, leading a siege against Wassel. However, this proved disastrous for the Frankish king, as the Vikings, emboldened by their assaults and fortified in their strongholds, defended their position with great resolve. The siege not only revealed the vulnerabilities of Charles' forces, but also highlighted the fierce independence of the Viking raiders, who were often underestimated by the continental powers. During Bjorn's tenure in the Seine region, he swore fealty to Charles in 858, though it remained unclear whether this pledge was ever honored. The lack of contemporary references to Bjorn after this meeting raises questions regarding his fate thereafter, yet reports of Viking raids in subsequent years persisted, indicating that his influence continued even as he faded from the historical record. In the face of adversity, the Norsemen remained a dominant force, with Paris suffering further plundering in 861, confirming both the resilience of the Viking spirit and the difficulties faced by Frankish leaders in containing them. The Mediterranean expedition from 859 to 861 marked another chapter of Bjorn's adventurous pursuits. Alongside Hastein and possibly other brothers, he ventured southward, a bold incursion that saw their fleets navigate through the Straits of Gibraltar. This journey was notable for its ambition alone. The raids stretched along the Iberian coast and into the southern reaches of France and Italy. The capture of Pisa became a highlight of this expedition, showcasing the Vikings' maritime skills and their capability to disrupt trade and dominance in the Mediterranean. Flushed with success from a series of victories across the region, the Viking crew seized various ports and settlements, demonstrating an exceptional ability to adapt to new maritime and cultural environments. The cunning of Bjorn and his companions truly came to the fore during attempts to penetrate the fortified city of Luni. By crafting a clever ruse, Hastein feigned illness to gain entry into the city under the pretense of desiring Christian sacraments, only to spring an ambush as soon as they were granted access. This exemplified the relentless creativity of Viking tactics, which often involved deception blended with ferocity. Despite their adventures and temporary settlements, the expedition's return journey faltered due to loss at sea and engagements with hostile forces, leading to further attrition of their fleet. Returning to the European theater, Bjorn faced personal tribulations as he became shipwrecked on the English coast, barely surviving against the odds. His subsequent arrival in Frisia marked a significant moment too, drawing to a close a turbulent chapter in an ever-expanding legacy that was simultaneously legendary and grounded in reality. Throughout, his adventures were imbued with mythical elements, as sagas recounted his lineage, linking him of a direct line to Ragnar Lothbrok, while framing his life against the backdrop of familial loyalty and honor. As he assumed authority over Uppsala and several holdings in Sweden, his positioning in Norse hierarchies became increasingly pronounced. The sagas expanded upon Bjorn's life story, building on tales of valor that underpinned the broader narrative of Ragnar Lothbrok's house. Bjorn and his brothers, the famed Ivar the Boneless, and the others ventured into various regions, setting upon expeditions that range from plundered England to sowing strife in the extensive territories of Francia. Tales of vengeance for their father Ragnar's execution painted the brothers as avengers of honor, embarking on missions of retribution that would secure both their names and their realms in the annals of history. Within these narratives, Bjorn's victories against local rulers and his eventual ascension to kingship illustrated the complexity of power dynamics in the Viking Age, as the stories of their exploit morph into legends of epic proportions. Among their most harrowing encounters was the engagement with King Hela of Northumbria, where the brothers sought to avenge the loss of their father. by forming tactical guilds with other Norse mountaineers to catalyze extensive raids not only as a means of surviving but also as a method of asserting dominance over landscape and lineage alike, where territory was often equated to glory. As Bjorn's reign unfolded, his contributions to the burgeoning Munso dynasty set precedents for future rulers, with sons like Erik Bjornsson poised to carry his legacy forward. Despite sourcing from both historical records and folklore, his story encapsulated the ideals of Viking culture, bravery, cunning, and relentless pursuit of honor. Though the later chronicles present historical inconsistencies and challenges regarding Bjorn's timeline and actions, the essence of his legacy vibrantly continues to adorn the chronicles of Scandinavian history. Narratives such as the Hervarar saga testify to the establishment of Bjorn as a pivotal force in Swedish history, recounting the tales of defeating Eystein Bailey and broadening the reach of Son of Kings of Scandinavia. Following Ragnar's demise, Bjorn inherited the helm of power in Sweden, orchestrating a complex web of alliances and rivalries as he carved out his dominion. Leif Erikson, often celebrated as Leif the Lucky, was born into a world rich with the stories of adventure and exploration that defined the Norse people. His early life unfolded in the late 10th century around the 70s, likely in Iceland, although the exact location is shrouded in mystery. He was the son of Erik the Red, an iconic figure who founded the first Norse settlement in Greenland after enduring exile from Norway due to his father's banishment for manslaughter. Erik's journeys across the North Atlantic left a profound impact on young Leif, growing up in the eastern settlement of Greenland, at the estate known as Brattahlid, alongside his siblings Thorstein, Thorvald, and Freydis. Leif's formative years were shaped by his father's rugged lifestyle and the lore of seafaring that surrounded him. With Erik the Red as a father, Leif was destined to embrace exploration. The Norse world was fraught with migratory myths and aspirational tales, compelling enough to encourage young men to seek their fortunes beyond known horizons. Leif's education may have included instruction in the maritime skills necessary for navigation, reading the skies, and understanding the ocean's moods. In pursuit of adventure and perhaps personal growth, Leif embarked on a journey to Norway. There he came under the patronage of King Olaf Tryggvason, whose court offered not only prestige but also new religious beliefs that would later shape Leif's destiny. During his time in Norway, Leif adapted to the ways of the court and experienced the burgeoning religious fervor sweeping through Scandinavia. It was there that he embraced Christianity, forging a new identity that contrasted with the traditional Norse beliefs of his forefathers. The king, recognizing Leif's potential and status, commissioned him to return to Greenland with the aim of converting the settlers there. On his return journey, however, fate intervened. A fierce storm swept his ship off course, propelling it towards uncharted lands. A serendipitous twist that would lay the groundwork for Leif's legacy. Instead of reaching Greenland as planned, Leif and his crew found themselves along the coast of lush, fertile area, a land teeming with unknown resources. Here they encountered wild grapes that would give this newfound territory its name of Vinland. The sagas relay various narratives surrounding the discovery of Vinland, with differing accounts of whether Leif was indeed the first European to encounter these shores. The saga of the Greenlanders contends that Bjarni Herjolfsson had previously sighted these lands but failed to make landfall. Intrigued and inspired by the tales of Bjarni, Leif gathered a crew of 35 stout-hearted men and set forth on an expedition to investigate the coastal regions Bjarni once described. The voyage was fraught with anticipation, expectation, and the desire for discovery that echoed through their Norse culture. As they journeyed to Vinland, Leif's crew first made landfall in a rugged terrain named Helluland, possibly present-day Baffin Island or parts of Labrador. It was a stark contrast to the verdant richness they would soon discover. After a brief exploration, they pressed onward to a more inviting area filled with thick forests, which Leif dubbed Markland, referring to the abundance of timber that would be useful for shipbuilding and adaptation. The second landing offered promise, yet it was the final destination, a bountiful land with a temperate climate and plentiful salmon. that made their expedition legendary. Upon settling in this hospitable area, Leif and his men built small shelters to survive the winter months. As they acclimated to Finland, the party explored its surroundings, sending scouting groups to investigate the stunning landscape. It was during one of these excursions that Tyrker, trusted foster father of Leif, discovered sprawling vines laden with grapes, a treasure that prompted the naming of the land Vinland or Vineland. The group capitalized on the land's rich resources, assuring their survival during the season by foraging and fishing. Leif's journey did not solely focus on personal glory or conquest. It was marked by a sense of responsibility and care for his men and the discoveries they made. As winter approached, the crew settled down in their new encampment, engaging in communal activities to ensure their safety and comfort. During this season, they faced not only the harsh realities of the burgeoning northern winter, but also ethical dilemmas surrounding the land they had stumbled upon. While they did not encounter indigenous peoples during their initial explorations, the tales of these native inhabitants, referred to as Skrælling, would soon unfold with future ventures by other Norse explorers. When spring heralded the promise of new beginnings, Leif's group prepared to return to Greenland, filled with cargo that included timber and the intriguing grapes that would forge their story into legend. As they retraced their route, they encountered hurdles of nature, navigating treacherous waters. Yet fortune smiled upon them once more when, during their travel back across the sea, they found and rescued a group of shipwrecked sailors, showcasing Leif's character and earning him the moniker Leif the Lucky. Upon arriving back in Greenland, Leif found himself not just as a son returning from adventure, but as a leader, a position that increasingly defined his role in Greenlandic society. With the death of Eric the Red shortly after his own return from Vinland, Leif inherited a legacy that came with the leadership of his father's community. Although the winds of adventure were calling him and the coastlines of Vinland beckoned, Leif chose to embrace his role as a chief, focusing on the welfare of his people and the integration of his newfound Christian beliefs within the Greenland settlement. Leif's familial life also reflects a blend of Norse tradition and the influences of his travels. His notable encounter with a noble woman named Thorgunna in the Hebrides resulted in the birth of Thorgils, his son. Yet Leif respected the familial ties important to Thorgunna and did not take her back to Greenland without the consent of her kin. While Thorgils came to live with his father later, the boy's reception was not entirely warm. He struggled to find his place in the Greenland community. As Leif Erikson aged, the narratives surrounding his life began to intertwine with legends and sagas that celebrated the Norse spirit of exploration. While details regarding his later years remain elusive, references to his status linger in the sagas, the earliest accounts revealing that he maintained prominence until at least 1018. Accounts suggest that his son Thorkel assumed leadership in Eriksfjord by 1025, indicating that the legacy of exploration and leadership persisted through Leif's lineage. The aftermath of Leif's explorations continued to resonate as other Norsemen sought the promises of Vinland, each journey a tale of ambition intertwined with the age-old desire for discovery. While Leif himself never returned to the land of grapes, later expeditions led by figures like Thorfinn Karlsefni attempted to settle in Finland. Their narratives of these voyages, layered with instances of interaction between Norse settlers and indigenous peoples, revealed a complex picture of cultural encounters marked by both trade and unforeseen consequences. Leif's expeditions inspired a culture of exploration that would echo through generations, knitting together the threads of Norse identity and the spirit of adventure. Through the centuries, his voyages captured the imagination and curiosity of those who sought to connect their heritage to the vast untamed expanses of the Americas. The many sagas narrating his story purported not only to celebrate his journey, but also to embolden those adventurous spirits in later centuries who would chart their own courses across the oceans, echoing the legacy of the daring Erikson. As the tales of his explorations faded into history, the figure of Leif Erikson remained emblematic of exploration's potential, perpetuated by the Nordic Americans who would honor him through monuments, observances, and mythology. Commemorative statues emerged in various cities, and the establishment of Leif Erikson Day reflected the enduring impact of his adventures on the cultural fabric of North America. This recognition anchored Leif's legacy in a broader narrative that entwined the history of cultures, explorations, and the endless quest for new horizons. Each piece of the narrative nourished a palpable sense of pride and identity among Nordic descendants, forever linking them to the ancient mariner who dared to sail into the unknown long before the arrival of Columbus and other later explorers. Sigurd Snake-in-the-Eye, a prominent figure of the 9th century, held a unique place within the tapestry of Viking lore and history. Born into the legendary lineage of Ragnar Lothbrok and Aslaug, he was one of the many sons who emerged from Ragnar's complex life, marked by conquests and trials. His nickname, Snake-in-the-Eye, derived from a peculiar birthmark resembling a snake biting its own tail, a symbol imbued with deeper meanings that preceded his legendary status. This physical characteristic set him apart from his brothers and influenced the sagas that would be told about him. From a young age, Sigurd was enveloped in the tales of valor and vengeance. The death of his half-brothers Erik and Agnar, at the hands of the Swedish king Hastein weighed heavily on the family. The fierce reaction of their mother Aslaug stirred the hearts of her remaining sons. Although she had no biological ties to Erik and Agnar, her blood wept, embodying the grief and fury that gripped them all. Sigurd, still a mere boy at the time, felt the weight of this loss profoundly and was emboldened by the call for retribution. Despite Ivar the Boneless' initial hesitation, sensing the magical defense surrounding Hastein's domain, Sigurd's youthful determination sparked a change. His foster father gathered 5 ships, and soon motivated brothers and allies mastered their fleets. In the ensuing assembly of warriors, Sigurd stood resolute, his youthful vigor inspiring those around him. This expedition, aimed at avenging the fallen, was not only a familial obligation but also a rite of passage that would propel him into the annals of history. Having achieved vengeance in this early phase of his life, Sigurd's military endeavors were just beginning. His youth also included a significant sojourn in Scotland, particularly in the Scottish Islands, with his brother Rathbart. During this time, they ruled as sub-kings in territories claimed by Ragnar's raids, solidifying their father's legacy in these northern lands. The authority and governance they exercised reinforced the significance of their lineage while providing Sigurd with invaluable experience in leadership and strategy. These experiences further shaped him as he navigated the treacherous world of Viking politics and power dynamics. The shockwaves of Ragnar Lothbrok's execution in a pit of snakes instigated tumultuous emotions among his sons. Sigurd and his brothers were ignited by fury upon receiving the news delivered by an envoy from King Ella of Northumbria. Sigurd's immediate and visceral reaction, a self-inflicted wound with a knife, demonstrated the depth of his grief and rage. In that moment, he and his brothers swore an oath of vengeance, pledging to right the wrongs inflicted upon their father. In 865-66, the stage was set for what became known as the Great Eden Army. Under Ivar the Boneless' strategic vision, the Viking forces, bolstered by Sigurd and other brothers, launched formidable campaigns throughout Britain. Their initial attempts to besiege Ella's kingdom proved unsuccessful, but Ivar orchestrated a cunning plan to lure Ella into a trap. The Great Eden Army feigned a retreat, drawing Ella into an ambush where the Viking warriors overpowered him. Sigurd, alongside his brothers, witnessed the culmination of their efforts as Ella was captured and he met a gruesome fate. The Blood Eagle, a symbolic act of retribution that resonated deeply within their warrior culture. With Ella subdued, Sigurd was able to solidify his position and land holdings within the realm. The Ragnarsson Thatter, a collection of sagas detailing the lives of Ragnar's sons, indicates that upon Ragnar's death, Sigurd inherited substantial territories in Denmark, including Zealand, Scania, Halland, and Viken. These acquisitions not only expanded his realm, but established him as a powerful figure in Scandinavian politics, allowing him to wield influence over the over other local chieftains and leaders. There is a possibility that Sigurd co-ruled Denmark with his brother Halfdan, as historical chronicles during the late 70s of the 9th century mention rulers by similar names. Marrying Bleia, the daughter of King Ella, Sigurd entwined his legacy with that of his father's enemy, establishing a connection that would further entrench his family's power. They bore 2 children, Cnut, who would grow up to inherit his father's ambitions, and Aslaug, Sigurdar daughter, destined for union with Helge of the Dagling lineage. Their conjoining created new alliances intertwining their family's fate with those of other prominent Nordic clans. The political landscape of this time was in constant flux, particularly marked by Viking expansion into the British Isles and beyond. Sigurd navigated these changing tides with increasing skill, leveraging marriage ties and military prowess to solidify the position of his descendants in Denmark. Cnut emerged as a significant ruler and was noted to have succeeded his father's legacy. He too found himself wrapped in the intricacies of power, which included the loss of Viken territory that had once been part of Sigurd's domain. Sigurd's legacy extended through his lineage into the next generation, with significant figures arising from his descendants. Cnut's rule would pave the way for the great Gorm the Old, whose own reign would be characterized by the consolidation of power and cultural unification within Denmark. Gorm's son, Harald Bluetooth, would further expand their reach, marrying into various noble houses and solidifying Danish presence not just in Scandinavia but also in parts of England. This direct line eventually led to the formidable Sweyn Forkbeard, whose claims to power included dominion over England during his reign, and then into an even broader empire through Cnut the Great, forging a legacy that shaped the very course of Northern European history. While many tales would be spun around Sigurd's life, from his youth spent seeking vengeance to the heights of power achieved through strategic marriages and military exploit, it was the connections forged by blood and alliance that truly defined the influence he and his descendants wielded. Sigurd's daughter, Aslaug, married into the prestigious Dagling lineage, producing progeny that would continue the traditions of chieftainship and warfare into the annals of Viking heritage. Halfdan Ragnarsson, one of the illustrious sons of the legendary Viking leader Ragnar Lothbrok, was born into an era of burgeoning Norse exploration and expansion. This time was characterized by fierce competition for territory and influence across the British Isles and Northern Europe. His life unfolded against a backdrop of political intrigue, martial prowess, and a relentless quest for dominance. Notably, he was among the key figures of the Great Eden Army, a coalition of Viking warriors that descended upon the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms beginning in the year 865. A campaign aimed most notably at avenging the death of their father figure Ragnar, who was said to have been treacherously executed by King Ella of Northumbria. The precise details of Ragnar's fate are obscured by the mists of legend, yet the tales perpetuated by the Norse sagas have nevertheless immortalized this vengeance motive, which galvanized half a dozen brothers, including Halfdan, Bjorn Ironside, Ivar the Boneless, and Sigurd Snake-in-the-Eye, among others. In the autumn of 865, Halfdan and his brethren would lead the Great Eden Army onto English soil, marking the beginning of a dynamic and tumultuous period. Upon landing in East Anglia, the army secured horses and supplies as they prepared for their ambitious campaigns ahead, determined to exploit the internal strife among the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. By the next year, Halfdan and his fellow commanders directed their sights northward towards Northumbria, a kingdom embroiled in a bitter civil war between King Ella and his rival Osbert. The disarray among the Northumbrians proved advantageous to the invaders. As the Viking forces advanced, the magnetic pull of York, a prosperous settlement at the heart of Northumbria, became their objective. By late 866, the Great Eden Army succeeded in its siege of York, resulting in the town's capture amidst the turmoil of civil unrest. Both Ella and Osbert fell in battle against the Danes, their demise leading to an absence of strong leadership and paving the way for foreign domination. With Northumbria laid low and under the edges of Viking puppeteer in the form of King Ecbert, Halfdan's ambitions knew no bounds. No content with merely consolidation of power, he turned the Great Eden's Great Eaten Army's gates southward, once again this time setting his sights on Mercia. In 867 the army swept into Nottingham, seizing control and fortifying their position for the winter. This prompted a response from Mercian King Burgred, who allied with King Ethelred of Wessex to besiege the town. However, after an arduous impasse, the Anglo-Saxon forces could not reclaim Nottingham, ultimately resulting in a truce that allowed the Danes to consolidate their hold over York. In 869, the Great Eaten Army launched a ruthless campaign against East Anglia. In a move that exposed the fragility of local power, they seized Thetford, resulting in a confrontation with the East Anglian king Edmund. In the ensuing violence, Edmund was killed, historically recognized afterwards as a martyr for his unwavering Christian beliefs. This particular victory fortified the Viking reputation further, yet during this time of consolidation, Ivar the Boneless mysteriously disappeared from historical records, possibly departing for Ireland, thus placing more military influence within Halfdan's hands. With Ivar's absence, Halfdan led the Danish forces into Wessex in 870. This proved a tumultuous period, marked by numerous skirmishes as the Danes engaged in as many as 9 notable engagements with West Saxon forces. Among these was the Battle of Ashdown, which took place on January 8, 871. Despite their initial successes and the continuous influx of warriors joining forces from Scandinavia, the West Saxons, now under the leadership of King Alfred, managed to withstand the Scandinavian onslaught. Facing mounting frustrations and failing to achieve decisive victories over the resilient Saxons, Halfdan brokered a truce with Alfred, granting a temporary respite to both sides. Following this winter at London, where Halfdan's position was affirmed through minted coins bearing his name, the Great Eaten Army found itself thrust back into northern territory in late 872. The political dynamics shifted considerably as unrest grew among the Northumbrians under the rule of Ecbert, a disturbance that prompted Halfdan and his warriors to quell the rebellion and restore order. In this venture, the army overwintered in Torksey, continuing to probe the fractured landscape of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Inevitably, the Viking ambitions extended across Mercia, and by 874, following a series of meticulous campaigns, the army succeeded in spirit-breaking the Mercian king Burgred, replacing him with a Silwulf, a Danish puppet regent. Undeterred by successes in the south, the army split into 2 factions. One segment, led by Guthrum, pushed towards against Wessex, while Halfdan steered his focus towards the northern Picts and Britons. The Viking incursions into Ireland carried considerable weight, especially after the death of Ivar, who had solidified his rule in Dublin. Halfdan, eager to reclaim what his brother had lost, deployed his forces across the Irish Sea, setting into motion a series of campaigns directed towards not just Irish territories, but also the deeply entrenched Viking strongholds therein. His efforts culminated in a deepening rivalry with Hastein Olafsson, the reigning king of Dublin, and through cunning maneuvering and likely deceit, Halfdan orchestrated a successful challenge that resulted in Hastein's untimely demise. With Dublin laying within reach, Halfdan momentarily diverted his attention back to Northumbria, looking to secure more resources and fervently stabilize his authority in the turbulent landscape. Yet in 877, Halfdan's ambitions unraveled as he returned to Ireland, where he sought to reclaim Dublin itself. His return, however, was met with fierce defiance from the established Viking settlers known as the Fair Heathens. These were factions that considered Halfdan and his warriors as intruders, leading to intense military engagement at the Battle of Strangford Lough. There, among the waves and the tumult of battle, Halfdan met his match and ultimately fell, his aspirations cut short amidst the clash of sword and shield. The outcome resulted in grave ramifications for his following. Those that survived returned to Northumbria, continuing to navigate the blooded waters of politics and power struggles in the wake of their leader's demise. The Viking presence remained fragmented and leaderless for several years until the ascendance of Guthrum as king in 883, hinting at the cyclical nature of power that characterized this era of restless upheaval. Ubba Ragnarsson, a notable leader of the Great Eaten Army, emerged during the Viking incursions into England in the 9th century. This formidable force, composed of warriors from various Scandinavian regions, began its campaign in 865 under the command of Ivar the Boneless. The purpose of the Great Eaten Army was clear: to seize control of British territories and lay claim to their riches. In the early phases of the invasion, the Great Army settled in East Anglia, decisively overthrowing local rulers and establishing control over key territories. Their initial successes paved the way for further aggressive operations against the neighboring kingdoms of Mercia and Northumbria. During this period, Ubba proved his strategic acumen and military prowess. His leadership contributed to the Viking skirmishes, allowing his contingent to gain substantial influence over expansive regions. Ubba's reputation intensified following the violent episodes surrounding the martyrdom of King Edmund of East Anglia. While the precise details of his involvement are shrouded, the act of displacing a king who defied Viking sovereignty became somehow legendary. Ubba's forces, in their relentless pursuit of dominion, became synonymous with the transformative era in which they operated, both feared and respected across the land. Following the initial successes, Ubba, alongside his fellow leaders, directed the Great Army further southward, penetrating deeper into English territories. They executed systematic raids which not only disrupted local governance but also seized vast amounts of goods and resources. The Viking strategy relied upon speed and violence, employing hit-and-run tactics that left many settlements in disarray. By the time they reached Wessex, the landscape had shifted. King Alfred, a formidable adversary, had begun to consolidate and rally the beleaguered Anglo-Saxon forces against the incursions. Ubba and his commanders recognized the potential reorganization of enemy forces as a threat and responded with renewed vigor. Their forces split into smaller bands, each harrying various fronts, attempting to draw the Anglo-Saxons thin. In the winter of 878, Ubba and his men encountered increasing difficulties as they pressed further into Wessex. Resources became scarce and the promise of plunder waned. They sought refuge in fortified camps while scouting for opportunities. Battles erupted as they attempted to hold territory, and the Anglo-Saxon resistance grew ever more determined. One key engagement during this period was the Battle of Cnut, where Ubba faced off against a concentrated force of West Saxon defenders. Despite their initial advantages, Ubba's forces found themselves combating a well-organized defense that capitalized on superior knowledge of the terrain. The battle was ferocious, demonstrating the lethal effectiveness of both Viking lances and Anglo-Saxon shields. Ubba's prowess on the field was notable as he moved among his men, encouraging them and rallying their spirits. However, the cohesive strategy of the Anglo-Saxon forces proved more effective than anticipated. Over time, the tide began to shift, as the relentless assault of Viking warriors faced staunch resistance from local archers and infantry while capitalized on their surroundings. As the battle raged, Ubba's leadership shone brightly amidst the chaos. Each clash of swords echoed across the hills, punctuated by the battle cries of warriors. Yet, as the day wore on, sustained pressure from the Angles began to overwhelm his ranks. The disorganization within the Viking forces became evident, prompted by a series of successful flanking maneuvers executed by Alfred's troops. Ultimately, Ubba was severely wounded in the fray, his commanding presence disrupted as he fought tooth and nail alongside his men. The defeat of Cnut marked a critical juncture in the Viking campaign, with Ubba's forces slowly retreating in disarray. By the end of the engagement, the Viking goals of conquest faced an undeniable setback as they reevaluated their approach, and Ubba's reputation as a formidable warrior was now matched with the brutal reality of an unforeseen resurgence of Anglo-Saxon strength. The aftermath saw Ubba retreat to reassess his position in England, understanding that the tide had turned against them. The war that had seemed winnable at the outset of their campaigns now felt fraught with peril. As the winter set in, leaders like Ubba and Ivar the Boneless faced internal strife within their ranks, struggling to maintain unity among diverse contingents with varying strategies and objectives. Leadership tensions erupted within the Great Army, as different factions eyed one another warily in the aftermath of their losses. Hastein, often referred to in various forms as Astein, Astingus, or Alsting, emerged during a time of great upheaval and opportunity that characterized the Viking Age. Although little is known of his early years, most sources reflect on his Danish origins, aligning him with the seafaring peoples known for their audacious raids. Some chroniclers claim he may have been born in the Pays de Troyes in modern-day France, a theory suggesting that many Saxons and Danes were relocated to Christian lands by Charlemagne around 800 to quell potential rebellion. This situation posits that Hastein may have been born to a family that eventually migrated back to Scandinavia, where he matured into an ambitious ship captain. The chronicles of his exploits, especially during the latter part of the 9th century, reveal Hastein as a figure of considerable renown and a leader of Viking expeditions that struck fear across Europe and the Mediterranean. His raiding activities began in earnest with a significant venture into the Mediterranean in the year 859, where he commanded a formidable fleet of 62 ships sailing from the Loire. Despite initial setbacks, including a defeat at the hands of the Asturians and later by the Muslim defenders of the Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba at Niebla, Hastein's tenacity yielded rewards soon thereafter. His most notable success came with the pillaging of Algeciras, burning its mosque and marking a profound moment of wrath against the Emirate of Cordoba. Hastein's seasonal campaigns in the years spanning from 859 to 862 saw him ally with Bjorn Ironside, another renowned Viking leader. Together they rolled through the Mediterranean, ravaging coastal settlements and cities with relentless vigor. The duo's adventures took them to regions such as Mazim along the north coast of Africa before they pressed further into the Umayyad Caliphate, achieving further notoriety in places like Ruela and the Balearic Islands. They even occupied Neckar for 8 days, weaving a path of destruction across the region. As winter neared, Hastein and Bjorn found refuge on Camargue Island at the mouth of the Rhone. After they thawed, they resumed their rampage, steering through Narbonne, Nîmes, and Arles, pressing northward to Valence, before settling their sights on Italy. These campaigns culminated in an audacious assault on the city of Luna, which Hastein mistook for Rome. Employing cunning deception, he feigned a deathbed conversion to Christianity to gain access to the city's gates, whereupon he led his men in a surprise attack. Although debates linger surrounding the veracity of this story, it illustrates Hastein's skill as much as his martial prowess. With further raids following that decimated cities like Pisa and Fiesole, Hastein's journey took a pragmatic turn when, weary from their ventures, he and his forces returned to the Loire. They encountered significant losses during storms, but nonetheless Hastein's reputation as a bold and strategic leader was firmly cemented. He made his way back toward the safety of northern France, but not before procuring slaves in North Africa, whom he later sold in Ireland, thus weaving the human element, a commodity in his campaigns, into the economic fabric of his raids. Settling in the region of Brittany, Hastein forged an alliance with Salomon, king of Brittany, and together they mounted an offensive against the Franks. Under his command, they delivered a severe blow to the Frankish forces at the Battle of Brissart in 866, killing Robert the Strong. Hastein pressed on, rampaging through Bourges in 867 and laying siege to Orléans the following year. However, a fragile peace would not hold, and by spring 872 Hastein found himself at odds with the Frankish king Charles the Bald. This time, his activities led to the occupation of Angers, resulting in a siege orchestrated by Charles that ultimately led to Hastein's temporary retreat. By 882, he had been expelled from the Loire region by Charles, prompting him to redirect his ambitions towards the Seine. This strategic move marked a new chapter, as with the Frankish monarchy continuing to consolidate power, Hastein sought fresh opportunities for plunder. He envisioned England as the next target for his fleet's insatiable hunger for wealth and territory. Hastein made his crossing to England in 892, landing with his smaller company of ships at Milton Regis in Kent, while his allied force amassed at Appledore. Alfred the Great, the English king, strategically positioned a Wessex army between the two fleets to prevent their union. Faced with a tactical stalemate, Hastein made a pragmatic decision to negotiate terms which included the baptism of his sons, marking a significant gesture amidst the ongoing hostilities. Leaving Kent in search of easier plunder in Essex, Hastein's plans unfolded rather chaotically. The larger force, weakened from overall attacks on Hampshire and Berkshire, sought to reunite with Hastein but encountered defeat at Farnham by Ethelred and an allied force. Following this setback, Hastein regrouped at Mersey Island. He fortified his position at Benfleet in Essex and repeatedly raided into Mercia from this stronghold. Despite Hastein's efforts to maintain a hold on his newfound territory, the resulting campaigns took a toll. As the ranks of his forces swelled, so did the desire for stability. However, with tensions simmering, Hastein's fort at Thorney ultimately succumbed to a combined force from Wessex and Mercia. In a twist of fate, the very fort Hastein fortified became his undoing, as he lost not only the stronghold, but also many of his men and families, leading to heavy emotional and tactical recalibrations. Re-establishing his base of operations, Hastein sought a new stronghold at Shrewsbury, but struggled to maintain control amidst the pressures from Alfred's forces. Negotiations with Alfred saw a temporary respite, wherein his sons were returned to him, acknowledging the bonds that even warring factions could respect. Yet, as tensions escalated, Hastein embarked upon renewed raids, traversing the Thames Valley and along the River Severn. In retaliation, Ethelred and a coalition army pursued him. The Vikings found themselves in a precarious situation at Battington, where over time hunger and pressure from Anglo-Saxon forces forced them into a bloody breakout. Escaping with losses, Hastein continued his strategic retreat toward their stronghold in Shrewsbury, but the spectre of defeat gnawed at his forces as they faced persistent reprisals. By mid-893, after grasping his campaign from East Anglia to Chester, Hastein sought to rebuild fortifications and assert dominance in Mercia. However, his ambitions encountered resistance once again as his stronghold faced a siege by Mercians determined to starve Hastein and his men into submission. With conditions worsening, he was compelled to abandon Chester, depressingly watching many of his warriors lose faith in their once formidable leader. Retreating through South Wales amidst intense skirmishes, Hastein's fortunes waned as they plundered the kingdoms of Brycheiniog, Gwent, and Glavesing. By the middle of 894, Hastein seemed to adapt to the changing tides, but his troops spread thin, now more desperate than rich. Their meandering path eventually led them back toward English territory, weaving through established Viking strongholds before returning to the relative safety of Mersey Island. In late 894, once again ready to press forward, Hastein and his forces towed ships up to the Thames to construct a fort along the River Lee. Yet, the relentless pursuit of a united Wessex army spearheaded by Alfred impeded their ambitions. Alfred's engineers swiftly built fortifications on either side of the river, effectively sealing Hastein's fate. The pressure mounted, leading Hastein to abandon his base and redirect his forces, sending families back to East Anglia. By 896, Hastein's army had fractured under the strain of prolonged engagements and dwindling supplies. Many retreated to their ancestral roots in East Anglia and Northumbria, while those without means sought escape to raiding opportunities abroad. Erik Haraldsson, better known as Erik Bloodaxe, emerged from a lineage steeped in the tumult of late Viking Age politics, claiming descent from the renowned Harald Fairhair, the first king to unify Norway. Born around the turn of the 10th century, Erik's formative years were characterized by a fierce upbringing that would shape his formidable reputation as a warrior and ruler. Raised amid the complexities of Norse chieftaincy and royal ambition, Erik was likely one of many sons navigating the shifting allegiances and ambitions of half-brothers vying for power. By the age of 12, Erik embarked on a journey that would see him become legendary. Fostered by a local chieftain named Thorerd, he ventured forth into the world of international raiding. His early exploit included aggressive campaigns against coastal settlements in the Baltic, the fringes of Denmark, and reaches as far as Germany, Scotland, and Ireland. Each successful raid contributed to his growing reputation, showcasing not just his martial prowess but also his penchant for the brutal art of Viking warfare, where skirmishes were swift and the spoils of victory enriched the victors and their kin. Around 932, Eric became a king of Norway following the death of his father, Harald Fairhair. His mother's identity remains unclear in historical texts, but the sagas portray Harald's numerous unions, hinting at a complex family dynamic. After ascending to the throne, Eric's leadership quickly manifested a pattern of violence towards those he perceived as threats to his rule. His rise to power was punctuated by a series of ruthless eliminations of rival claimants, including the cold-blooded murders of half-brothers Ragnvald, the ruler of Hadeland, and Bjorn Farman, the ruler of Vestfold. Though some sagas suggest that these killings were sanctioned by their father, they nevertheless left a lasting stain on Eric's legacy, earning him the notorious nickname Bloodaxe. The harshness of Eric's rule sparked discontent among the Norwegian aristocracy, leading to his swift downfall. Following a fierce campaign against remaining loyal supporters of his half-brother Hakon, who had spent years as a foster child in King Æthelstan's court in England, Eric found himself increasingly isolated. The nobility, weary of Eric's despotic governance, turned to Hakon, who returned to Norway as a liberator, quickly garnering support and ultimately forcing Eric into exile. Forced to flee, Eric sought sanctuary in England, where his name would become intertwined with the volatile politics of Northumbria region, marked by a tenuous balance between the West Saxons and the Berno-Norse rulers. His arrival in Northumbria was not entirely disfavored. Some local factions were eager to support a figure who bore the blood of a Viking king. In 947 he was appointed as a king of Northumbria, seizing power amidst the political tumult following the death of King Æthelstan. The Northumbrians, however, were known for their fickleness, and Eric's governance soon mirrored the harshness of his rule in Norway. During his first reign in Northumbria, Eric faced a complex web of loyalties and betrayals, marked by rival factions that fluctuated dramatically in their allegiances. In 948, the Northumbrians, disenchanted with Eric's tumultuous rule, again turned on him, leading King Edred of England to retaliate with punitive raids across Northumbria, effectively dismantling Eric's authority. Yet his first fall did not signal the end. The mercurial nature of Viking politics afforded him opportunities once again. In 952, fortune smiled upon Eric anew as a faction of Northumbria expelled his successor Amlaib Cuaran, enabling Eric's return to power for a second albeit short-lived reign. During this time, he engaged in a series of military endeavors that highlighted his Viking heritage, including expeditions aimed at consolidating his power and raiding neighboring territories. Yet the roots of his downfall remained deeply intertwined with local politics, and Eric struggled to maintain control over a kingdom rife with dissent and betrayal. Eric's reign found further complication through his marriage to Gunhild, a woman of significant political acumen, often portrayed in the sagas as instrumental in Eric's rise and subsequent tumult. Despite the marital alliance, her relationship with Eric bore the weight of rivalry and ambition, much of which stemmed from her own familial alliances and the quest for power. Under her influence, Eric was embroiled in personal disputes that only enhanced his notoriety as a ruler more concerned with retribution than the welfare of his subjects. Opposition continued to mount against Eric in Northumbria, leading to increasing tensions with local power brokers, including figures like Archbishop Wulfstan, who initially supported Eric but whose loyalties shifted as local sentiment turned bitter. In 954, Eric's reign came crashing down when he was betrayed by his own regional leaders. A cunning plot set in motion by Osulf, the High Reeve of Northumbria, culminated in Eric's assassination in the Stainmore Pass, where he, his son, and his brother fell to treachery. This brutal end signified the culmination of Eric's tumultuous career, characterized by ambition and violence. The sagas narrate Eric's final moments in a grandiose manner, making it difficult to separate historical truth from embellishment. Eric's life had become a tapestry woven with the threads of leadership, betrayal, conquest, and alliances shaping his enduring legacy. Following his death, he became a figure of intrigue in the Norse sagas, often depicted as a tragic hero, whose violent methods rendered him both formidable and flawed. His exploit and the wrath of his enemies continued to echo in the narratives passed down through generations, illustrating the dynamic and often ruthless interplay of power in the Viking Age. Gunnar Hamundarson, an influential chieftain of 10th century Iceland, inhabited the picturesque region of Iltarendi in Flotslid. Revered for his physical prowess and exemplary character, he embodied the ideal of the Viking era. His formidable stature and striking physical attributes garnered admiration. He was described as the handsomest man, with thick, well-groomed blonde hair, blue eyes that sparkled with intelligence, and ruddy cheeks that spoke to his vigorous health. This combination of beauty and strength was augmented by his remarkable athletic abilities, which included extraordinary feats such as jumping his own height while clad in full body armor. He was equally skilled in archery, able to take down targets from impressive distances with unerring accuracy, and was proficient in hand-to-hand combat, favoring the þekkja, a hybrid weapon reminiscent of a halberd that he had gained in a raid on Iceland. Gunnar's life was intertwined with that of Hallgerd Höskuldsdottir, known more commonly as Harald Lothbrok. Their marriage, rooted in passion rather than practicality, was marred by Hallgerd's notorious past. She had previously lost two husbands, one of whom was said to have met his end by her own hand, though only the first husband's demise was directly attributed to her action. The union raised eyebrows, especially amongst Gunnar's friends and allies, including Niall Thorgeirsson, a wise and shrewd man who questioned the longevity of a relationship built on such fiery emotions. Nonetheless, Gunnar was enchanted by Hallgerd, and she held a powerful sway over him that proved to be both intoxicating and destructive. As a warrior, Gunnar was celebrated for his invincibility in battle, described as a man who found joy in the thrill of life. He reveled in feasting and festivities, delighting in the vibrant social tapestry of his time. While he was polite and kind, he was often not perceived as particularly clever due to his straightforward manner of speech. Yet those who knew him well understood that beneath his robust exterior lay a man of significant insight and emotional intelligence, a quality that drew others to him. Tragedy found its way into Gunnar's life through a series of fateful decisions. His close friendship with Niall proved to be a double-edged sword. Niall, possessing a keen ability to foresee the repercussions of actions, cautioned Gunnar against committing acts that would endanger his life. He specifically warned him against killing two members of the same family, foretelling that such avengers would inevitably lead to his demise. However, driven by his unwavering loyalty and fervor, Gunnar could not ignore the insults hurled against him, leading him to take the lives of two kin of Gissur the White. This choice ignited a series of repercussions that would unravel the threads of his life. Upon realizing the gravity of his actions, Gunnar was urged once again by Niall to flee Iceland to save himself from the impending retribution that Gissur's family would exact. Initially inclined to heed this advice, Gunnar was ultimately distracted by the beauty of his homestead as he prepared to leave. The sight of Hildarendi, bathed in the warm light of the setting sun, stirred feelings of nostalgia and attachment, compelling him to abandon his plans for flight and instead brace for the approaching storm. It was a decision that would seal his fate. As tensions escalated, a group of men, bearing old grievances, set out to avenge their kin. Among them was Thorgrim, one of the scouts who had come to assess Gunnar's readiness. When Thorgrim approached Hildarendi, he was met with the sharp instinct of a warrior. Gunnar, ever vigilant, was not caught off guard. He struck first, thrusting his headgear through a gap in the wall and killing Thorgrim instantly. This act of defiance did not go unnoticed by the surrounding men, who soon learned of Gunnar's presence inside the homestead. They quickly rallied to confront him, recognizing that they were facing a warrior whose reputation alone could intimidate even the most seasoned of fighters. Initially, Gunnar held the upper hand, showcasing his archery skills with precision as he sent arrows flying towards his assailants. Yet, in the heat of battle, misfortune struck when his bowstring snapped, disrupting his tactical advantage. Seeking to remedy the situation, Gunnar turned to Hallgerd, hoping she would provide him with strands of her hair to repair his bow. However, the bitterness of their previous quarrel emerged. Hallgerd, angry over a past incident where Gunnar had slapped her following her act of theft during a time of famine, refused him in his hour of need. This stark refusal left Gunnar vulnerable, for without his bow he was ill-equipped to fend off the waves of attackers now crashing upon him. Forced into close combat, Gunnar wielded his heroic training and natural talents to fight against the odds. Even in the face of insurmountable numbers, he demonstrated extraordinary bravery, knowing that the stakes of loyalty, honor, and vengeance intertwined with every blow he dealt. He fought fiercely, employing all the skills he had honed over the years, yet, as the relentless force of Gisur's men bore down on him, it became increasingly clear that even the legendary heroes were not immune to fate. One by one, his adversaries closed in around him, numbers overwhelming his physical gifts. The culmination of his life came in that fierce encounter at Hildarend. Gunnar, the man who seemed untouchable, fell beneath the weight of many blades, a true testament to both his valor and the price of infatuation with a woman whose past held the power to unravel the threads of life. Rurik, a prominent Varangian chieftain, first enters the historical narrative around 862, with his story woven into the rich tapestry of Eastern European history. This era was marked by discontent among various East Slavic and Finnic tribes, including the Jutes, Slovenes, Krivichs, Marians, and Ves. These tribes, seeking autonomy, initially drove the Varangians back beyond the sea, refusing to pay tribute and attempting to govern themselves. However, as intertribal rivalries grew and the ability to govern themselves unraveled, the tribes recognized their need for order and stability. In a moment of collective decision, they chose to invite outside assistance, which led them to summon Rurik and his fellow Varangians to restore harmony. Accompanied by his brothers Sinus and Truvor, Rurik brought with him a retinue of warriors, setting the stage for the establishment of a new order. Upon reaching what is now Novgorod, Rurik's leadership qualities quickly came to the forefront. The chronicle records indicate that Rurik settled in Novgorod, a region that would serve as an epicenter of his growing power. Each brother carved out his territory as Sinus took command of Belozor and Truvor settled Izborsk. However, soon after these settlements were established, both brothers met their demise, leaving Rurik as the world ruler of their combined territories. With the passing of his siblings, Rurik consolidated his rule over northern Ruthenia, extending his domain and establishing what would become the foundations of the Human Rus. His governance was marked by wisdom and strategic acumen. Rurik's followers sought to expand their realms. Under his guidance, groups like Askald and Dir were dispatched to Constantinople. They seized control of Kiev, laying the groundwork for a future state characterized by trade and cultural exchange with the Byzantine Empire. These early endeavors not only expanded Rurik's influence, but also established connections that would prove crucial for future rulers. Rurik's time was characterized by a mix of governance and occasional expeditions, and his authority was primarily asserted through personal leadership rather than extensive political structures. The Laurentian Code notes Rurik's founding of the city of Novgorod, which was strategically located near the Volkhov River, providing a vital link for trade communication with other regions. As he ruled from his stronghold, Rurik's authority grew, allowing him to have a significant impact on the cultural and economic development of the early Rus. Around the time of Rurik's death, which is believed to have occurred in the late 70s of the 9th century, he entrusted his realm and his very young son Igor to Oleg, a member of his kin. This act not only secured the continuity of Rurik's lineage, but also set the stage for the next phase of expansion. Oleg would eventually move the capital to Kiev, effectively transforming the political landscape that Rurik had laid the groundwork for. His move was more than just a shift in geography. It signaled an ambitious aim to unify the surrounding territories and centralize power under his regency. The ascension of Oleg was also marked by decisive actions. To establish his authority, he dispatched military forces to eliminate local rulers who held sway over Kiev, ensuring that the key city fell under his control. This ruthless ambition allowed Oleg to solidify his position and expand the reach of the Kievan Rus further into the neighboring regions. Under Oleg's leadership, the state transitioned into a more cohesive entity, laying the groundwork for future economic prosperity built largely on trade routes that connected the north with Constantinople and the south. Rurik's name and legacy became forever entwined with the rise of the Kievan Rus, as the dynasty he founded would continue to shape the landscape of Eastern Europe for centuries. The Rurikids would rule the land of the Rus, intertwining with the lives of countless people throughout their reign. Despite the absence of detailed accounts of Rurik's day-to-day governance, his impact can be felt in the narrative of those who followed him, particularly through the achievements of his descendants in their handling of intertribal loyalty as well as external relations. Over time, the legacy of the Rurikids transformed as various factions emerged that could trace their lineage back to Rurik himself. Many noble families maintaining claims of descent from this influential chieftain further established the importance of his lineage in politics and society. This lineage extended beyond the Kievan Rus to influence future governing bodies, including the Tsardom of the Muscovy, which would arise much later. The political dynamics that developed from the foundations laid by Rurik fostered a rich history of alliances, enmities, and cultural exchange. As historians examined the various branches of the Rurik family, the genealogical questions surrounding the dynasty became of paramount importance, linking numerous royal houses through marriage and inheritance. Even generations later, connections to Rurik would provide legitimacy and prestige to rulers, anchoring their authority in a shared past that hailed from the Varangian tribes. Olaf II Harald's son, later known as Saint Olaf, emerged from the storied background of Norwegian nobility, born around 995 in Ringerike to Åsta Gudbrandsdatter and Harald Grenske, a petty king in Vestfold. His birth was shadowed by his father's early death, positioning him within a lineage that boasted connections to Harald Fairhair, Norway's first king. This noble heritage laid the foundation for Olaf's aspirations. The political landscape of his youth was rife with the ambitions of local petty kings, each vying for power in a fractured Norway. As a young man, Olaf sought the warrior's path that so many youths of his class undertook. His travels began with ventures across the Baltic Sea, where he engaged in various military activities, including encounters with the Finns and other Scandinavian tribes. Tales from early sagas recount his bravery and ferocity in battle, shaping his reputation as a formidable leader. The legendary skaldic poetry of the time extolled his exploit, although specific details often fell prey to embellishment, as was customary in tales of distinguishable figures. His early military endeavors included involvement in the siege of Canterbury in 1011, where his actions aligned him with broader Viking pursuits of the era. These experiences enhanced his martial skills and allowed him to gather followers eager to align themselves with a man of such promise. Olaf's journey also took him briefly to England, where he was said to have played a role in restoring King Ethelred the Unready to his throne in London, possibly in 1014, although the precise events surrounding this episode remain clouded in historical debate. Travel further shaped Olaf's spiritual and political identity. During his time in the lands of the Danes and Normans, he encountered Christianity, which began to resonate with his ambitions. The baptism he received in Rouen marked a pivotal shift. Here, he was initiated into a faith that would soon be intertwined with his royal ambitions. The Normans had a unique relationship with Christianity, having adopted it alongside the complexities of their identity. This encounter laid the groundwork for Olaf's future endeavors, as he sought to elevate Norway not only as a geographic entity, but as a unified Christian kingdom. Returning to Norway in 1015, Olaf declared himself the king. His ascension involved a nuanced web of alliances with the support of several petty kings who recognized his lineage and warrior reputation. Yet the journey to establish dominance was fraught with challenges. Upon arrival, he immediately sought to further legitimate his rule by claiming the legacy of Harald Fairhair, positioning himself as the rightful heir to a unified Norway. His first decisive engagement came in 1016 during the Battle of Nassau, where he met early Sweyn, who had been the de facto ruler of Norway. The significant victory propelled Olaf into a position of power previously unseen by his predecessors. Driven by ambition, he set about consolidating his power across Norway, ruthlessly eliminating rival claimants and uniting various factions under his banner. He found the town of Borg, marking his strategic importance in Ostfold, a pivotal location for commerce and trade. Olaf's reign saw him extend Norwegian influence through the Orkney Islands and into the heart of Denmark, asserting his position as a king of formidable stature. His marriage to Astrid Olafsdotter, a political alliance with King Olaf Skotkonung's daughter, further cemented his status within Scandinavian nobility, intertwining royal families in a web of alliances that sought peace and cooperation. Through his reign, Olaf endeavored to introduce Christianity to the Norwegians. His efforts included fortifying ecclesiastical structures by enlisting bishops from influential Christian realms, the likes of which came from England and Normandy. The infusion of religious leadership into governance aimed to stabilize and Christianize the rural population, extending beyond coastal strongholds into the heartland where pagan traditions were deeply entrenched. However, Olaf's efforts to impose Christian practices throughout coercion damaged his reputation among many of his subjects who viewed his methods as heavy-handed. Accounts illustrate his inclination to wield violence in pursuit of conversion, earning him the moniker Olaf the Lawbreaker among those resistant to his rule. As the years wore on, Olaf's rule was marred by increasing unrest among the Norwegian nobility, who began to see his autocratic tendencies and alliances with foreign entities as threatening. In 1029, dissatisfaction grew among the nobility, and King Cnut of Denmark seized the opportunity to challenge Olaf's supremacy. Rising discontent culminated in Olaf's forced exile, pushing him away from his reign and into the relative safety of the Kivandrus and the Swedish province of Neriken. Despite his flight, the tenacious king remained committed to his vision of a unified Christian Norway. Years later, with his hopes of restoration alive, Olaf gathered resources in exile. After the loss of Knut's Norwegian regent, Jarl Håkon Eriksson, at sea in 1029, Olaf saw an opening to reclaim his kingdom. With backing from Swedish King Anund Jakob, he sought to launch a campaign to retake power. His strategy favored stealth and surprise, aiming to bypass Danish forces and directly confront his adversaries in Norway. In the summer of 1030, Olaf made a fateful return to Norway, leading an army that represented his loyalist supporters. His march towards Nidaros, the capital of Norway at the time, was intended to restore his rule. However, the landscape had shifted dramatically. Many of those he sought to lead had turned against him, influenced by the ongoing turmoil and external pressures. In the Battle of Stiklestad on July 29, 1030, Olaf faced a formidable opposition, including former supporters who, disillusioned by his rule, took up arms against him. Despite fierce fighting, Olaf was ultimately struck down, and with his death, his aspirations for the restoration of a unified and Christian Norway were buried alongside him. Immediate reactions to Olaf's death transformed him from a fallen king into a martyr. Bishop Grimkettel, recognizing the potential for an enduring legacy, swiftly canonized Olaf, aligning his martyrdom with emerging Christian narrative. By 1031, just a year after his death, Olaf's identity shifted from that of a sovereign ruler to a saintly figure symbolizing the struggle for Christian unity in Norway. His remains were buried at Nidaros, quickly becoming a site for pilgrimage, the fate of his followers intertwining with their collective identity. Over the following decades, Olaf's memory blossomed, cementing his status as Norway's patron saint. The cult of Olaf, eloquently expressed through spurious reports of miracles and divine interventions, helped unify the fragmented country. His posthumous veneration became a powerful tool for fostering national identity, particularly as Norway grappled with the recollections of his pagan past and the quest for a cohesive Christian narrative. Memorials were erected and celebrations emerged, with Olsok marking the anniversary of his death each July. The broader narrative surrounding Olaf grew through tales that blended historical fact with folk traditions, constructing an enduring mythos that would echo through generations. He was portrayed less as a warrior king and more as a protective figure against the forces of evil, merging attributes of pagan deities with the Christian faith. The enchantments of Old Norse folklore seeped into the tales of his life, where he became not only a king but also a slayer of trolls and a formidable guardian against dark forces. In the later medieval lore, Olaf's legacy morphed into a focal point of Norway's national pride, encapsulating the dichotomy of their Viking heritage and the newly embraced Christian values. His imagery as holy warrior wielding an axe, symbolizing both his earthly rule and divine sanction, became infused in various cultural representations, influencing art, literature, and architectural styles across Scandinavia. Not only did he embody the complicated transition from pagan beliefs to Christianity, but he also unified the Norwegian populace throughout the shared reverence for his legacy. As the centuries progressed, Olaf's narrative transcended borders, influencing communities well beyond Norway. Churches dedicated to him adorned landscapes in places like the Faroe Islands and across different regions in England. His presence seeped into Scandinavian nationalism, intertwining with the royal narratives of monarchs who sought to connect their reigns to the divine legacy of Saint Olaf. The churches built in his honor not only served the spiritual needs of the populace, but also became emblematic of a growing religious identity throughout Northern Europe. Through the festivities surrounding his feast day, a blend of local folklore and Christian observances flourished, further embedding him with the cultural fabric of the Norse world. Pilgrimages to his shrine at Nidaros Cathedral engaged not only on the faithful, but became a vital aspect of medieval Norwegian society, facilitating trade and cultural exchange among far-flung communities. His story bridged the gap between the ancient and modern worlds, steering Norway into a new era while keeping alive the echoes of its storied past. St. Olaf's impact reverberated throughout history as symbol of national identity and religious devotion, his life trajectory transforming into a cornerstone for the burgeoning sense of Norwegian pride and faith that characterized the Middle Ages. The many interpretations of his story, whether seen as a tyrant in life or a saint in death, revealed the complexities of forging a unified identity in a land steeped in multifaceted histories and traditions. His legacy endures, woven into the cultural and spiritual consciousness of Norway, manifesting both the reverent observances of his feast and the enduring pride of a nation that continues to celebrate the eternal King of Norway. Thorfinn Karlsefni, whose life would echo through the ages, was born around 980 in the rugged landscapes of Iceland. He came from a lineage that carried the weight of Norse heritage. His father, Thord Horsehead, was respected among the early settlers, which set the stage for Thorfinn's own aspirations. Growing up on the estate of Stad in Rennes, he was immersed in the tales of his ancestors who had carved their paths through uncharted lands and turbulent waters. From a young age, Thorfinn developed the qualities of a thorough man, endowed with a merchant's acumen and a spirit of adventure that later became his defining traits. Thorfinn's early years were marked by the rich traditions of the time, where seafaring and exploration were as integral to identity as farming and domestic life. He learned the importance of community and commerce, which shaped his character and ambitions. His innate curiosity about the wider world was further ignited by the stories of explorers who returned from their voyages with tales of distant lands, including the elusive Vinland, a land of plenty that promised untold opportunities for those brave enough to claim it. In his early adulthood, Thorfinn established himself as a successful merchant, engaging in trade that connected his homeland to the vast markets beyond. His endeavors positioned him advantageously with the intricate tapestry of Norse society, enable him to cultivate relationships and gather followers who would later accompany him on his fateful journey. It was during this prosperous period that he encountered Gudrid, Thorbjarnardóttir, a woman of notable lineage herself, who had previously been married to Thorstein Erikson, the brother of Leif Erikson. Their union was not only a personal alliance, but a significant one with the larger narrative of Norse exploration, as it connected Thorfinn to the prominent Erik family, known for their own feats across the seas. As Thorfinn and Gudrid settled into their life together, tales of Vinland continued to captivate Thorfinn's imagination. Encouraged by Gudrid, who shared his vision of further Norse presence in the new lands, he resolved to undertake an expedition that would not only solidify their legacy, but establish a permanent Norse settlement. Around the year 1010, equipped with resolve and the support of his wife, Thorfinn gathered a group that comprised numerous men and women willing to venture into this unknown territory. The preparations were meticulous, showcasing their intent to create a lasting home. Livestock and provisions were carefully selected for the journey, symbolizing the desire for permanence rather than mere exploration. Thorfinn and his entourage set sail on sturdy ships, navigating the waters that Leif Erikson had once traversed. What struck them upon arriving in Vinland was both its beauty and richness. The lush landscapes dotted with resources felt promising to the settlers. Initial encounters with the indigenous peoples, whom they referred to as the Skrælings, demonstrated both curiosity and apprehension on either side. Thorfinn's group engaged in trade, showcasing the bounties of their own homeland while attempting to learn about the ways of the natives. The settlers harvested grapes, timber, and a variety of game, affirming that this land could be a new paradise for their people. Amidst these promising beginnings, Thorfinn's sturdy settlement faced unforeseen trials. The dynamics of a mostly male settlement, compounded by the relatively few women, led to a rise in tensions and private grievances that simmered beneath the surface. There were cultural misunderstandings as well, particularly linked to the offerings made to the Skrælings, showcasing how different beliefs could lead to unintended consequences. One pivotal moment involved a beached whale, a fortunate find at first, but it led to discord among the settlers. Some viewed it as a blessing, a gift from the gods, while others believed it was a misfortune that would bring about dire consequences. This schism grew wider, leading to strife that threatened to unravel their efforts. Thorfinn, despite his efforts to maintain solidarity, faced the challenge of unifying his people under increasingly difficult conditions. As their rainy season turned into winter, unanticipated challenges mounted. The relationship with the neighboring Skrælings shifted when a bull they had brought fled and frightened the natives, leading to strained interactions. Attempts at diplomacy faltered as cultural boundaries seemed insurmountable. Misunderstandings deepened, eventually culminating into hostilities that required Thorfinn and his followers to grapple with the reality of their precarious position in this new environment. The spring brought a renewed resolve, but also further confrontations. Thorfinn's expedition had staked its claim on the land, yet the burgeoning relationship with the Skrælings grew increasingly fraught. Thorfinn believed in coexistence, but each encounter pushed them further towards a defining moment. The settlers remained hopeful that through trade and understanding bonds could be forged, yet reality often bruised those ideals. Tensions reached their peak when a surprise encounter ensued, prompting a desperate struggle for survival. Thorfinn's sharp instincts shifted to ensure the safety of his people as he devised a plan to retreat into the nearest woods for protection. Amidst the chaos, Gudrid emerged as a fierce protector of her family and newfound home. In a striking display of bravery, she took up arms, scaring off intruders with her fearless gestures, which became a testament to the resoluteness of the Norse women. It was through this involvement that Thorfinn came to appreciate the critical roles women played in their survival and the foundational aspects of their society. Ultimately, their ambitions in Vinland yielded a bittersweet legacy. Following a series of precarious events, including the tragic demise of Thorvald Eriksson, who had attempted to explore the region before Thorfinn, the hope for a permanent settlement waned. It became apparent that the vision of a thriving Norse colony was becoming increasingly untenable, and plans changed as pragmatism took hold. Forced to confront the limitations of their undertaking, Thorfinn made the arduous decision to return to Greenland, bringing with him lessons garnered from their time spent in Vinland. The journey back was fraught with peril, and many in Thorfinn's company struggled against the strong seas. While some made it back to Greenland, others were not as fortunate, finding their fate in the stormy waters of the Irish Sea. Upon returning to the familiar shores of Greenland, Thorfinn faced the realities of both loss and the gifts of experience. His son Snorri, born in Vinland, represented the continuity of their legacy, carrying forward the Norse spirit, while symbolizing the intertwining of their history with the New World. Harald Bluetooth, also known as Harald Gormsson, emerged in a time of significant transformation within the Nordic region, ascending the throne of Denmark circa 958 after the passing of his father Gorm the Old. The son of Gorm and Thera Dannebod, Harald inherited a realm on the cusp of change as continental influences from the Christianized neighboring lands began to seep into the fabric of Viking society. His reign would be marked not only by military enterprises and territorial expansion, but also by a notable commitment to embracing Christianity, which was a departure from the pagan traditions that had long dominated the realm. From the onset of his reign, Harald focused on consolidating control over the disparate tribes within Denmark, primarily in Jutland and Zealand. His rule coincided with the flourishing of trade routes and burgeoning interactions with other cultures, particularly those to the south. A significant endeavor during his reign was the introduction of the Yelling Stones, an impressive pair of monuments that served as a testament to his lineage and his efforts into converting his subjects to Christianity. These stones, inscribed with runes, chronicled Harald's victories and highlighted his pivotal role in the Christianization of Denmark. The larger stone proclaimed King Harald bade these memorials to be made after Gorm, his father, and Thera, his mother. The Harald won at the wall of Denmark and Norway and turned the Danes to Christianity. Thus Harald sought to anchor his legacy both in monumental architecture and in spiritual transformation of his people. In addition to promoting Christianity, Harald's reign also witnessed extensive economic military fortifications across Denmark. He was an innovative leader in infrastructure, overseeing the construction of ring forts strategically placed throughout his kingdom to reinforce military power and control trade routes. The design of these forts was remarkable. It featured a circular layout with gates aligned to the cardinal directions and a central courtyard that housed several structures reflecting a deliberate and organized approach to defense. Notable examples include Trelleborg in Zealand, Hagersborg, Fyrkat, and Børring, among others. This intricate network of fortified sites not only served military purposes, they also became symbols of Harald's authority and wisdom for a unified Denmark. Despite these advancements, Harald's relationship with his neighbors was fraught with tensions, particularly with the expanding Germanic kingdom under the Holy Roman Empire. After Otto I's death, Harald sought to assert dominance by raiding Saxony. However, this incited a retaliatory assault from Otto II, resulting in losses that severely undermined Harald's hold on power. The battles of this period often swayed in unpredictable directions. For instance, despite initial successes, Harald faced significant setbacks after the Danes were routed at the Danevirke in 974. This loss not only crippled his military standing, it also diminished his influence over Norway, where he had briefly claimed kingship after the assassination of Harald Greycloak in the 70s. The political landscape was further complicated by rivalries within his own family. His son Sweyn Forkbeard grew increasingly ambitious and relationships became strained. It is widely believed that Sweyn ultimately turned against his father, fueled by a desire for power and supported by factions discontent with Harald's leadership. This internal discord culminated in a violent rebellion that ended Harald's reign. The exact details of his death remain obscured by time. Some accounts suggest he was gravely wounded in a skirmish against his son's forces and succumbed to his injuries around 985 or 86. After his death, his body was returned to Denmark for burial at the Trinity Church in Roskilde, a reflection of both his status as a king and the Christian faith he had embraced. The manner of Harald's conversion to Christianity remains a subject of debate among historians, as medieval chronicle accounts differ significantly on the circumstances surrounding this pivotal moment. According to Widukind of Corvey, a cleric named Poppa performed a miraculous act in front of Harald, showcasing the power of the Christian faith. The narratives suggest that Harald, impressed by such displays, was persuaded to convert, which he formalized during peace negotiations with Otto I or Otto II. In contrast, other writings, notably by Adam of Bremen, depict a more forcible conversion occurring after military defeat. Regardless of the circumstances, Harald's acceptance of Christianity brought profound changes to Denmark, aligning his kingdom closer to the religious and political currents sweeping across Europe. As Harald sought to establish a cohesive identity for Denmark, he married several times, strategically aligning himself with influential families. His marriages included Gunhild, Tove Tora, and Gerd, Olaf's daughter, each contributing to his political alliances. Of his children, Sweyn Forkbeard would emerge as the most notable, ultimately surpassing Harald's legacy as he positioned himself as king in England and Denmark. Sweyn's actions, particularly the apparent betrayal against his father, encapsulated the generational turmoil of the time, as the ambition for power often came at the cost of familiar ties. The impact of Harald Bluetooth extended into the realms of commerce and economy as he introduced the first standardized coinage in Denmark, facilitating trade and economic stability in a diverse and dynamic society. His coins not only served practical purposes but also emerged as tools of propaganda, showcasing his image as reinforcing his authority across the extensive trade networks of the Viking Age. Harald's legacy, shaped by his achievements and failures, echoed throughout the annals of history, influencing subsequent generations of rulers in Scandinavia. His name continued to resonate long after his death, and in modern times it was immortalized through wireless technology, with Bluetooth technology named in his honor, symbolizing the unification of disparate devices, much as Harald sought to unify the tribes of Denmark. The logo itself, a bind rune representing his initials, became a nod to his impactful life. Guthrum, a figure of notable significance in the late 9th century Britain, was born around 835 in Denmark. His early life is enveloped in the broader patterns of Norse culture and the burgeoning Viking incursions that began to sweep across the British Isles in the late 8th century. These incursions transformed the political landscape of England, as Viking raiders initially sought goods and resources through smaller-scale raids, but eventually escalated into organized military expeditions aiming for conquest and settlement. By the time Guthrum emerged as a leader, the Great Heathen Army had established itself firmly on English soil, having landed on East Anglian shores in the mid-60s of the 9th century with grand ambitions. The arrival of this massive force represented a culmination of decades of Viking exploration and raiding. In 871, Guthrum became a prominent leader of the Great Summer Army, a reinforcements contingent that merged with the already established Great Heathen Army in Reading. In this period he gained recognition not just for his leadership but also for his tenacity on the battlefield, a trait that would define his military career. With the combined forces of the great heathen army, Guthrum participated in the numerous campaigns against Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, particularly focusing on East Anglia and Northumbria. The conquests were marked by tactical prowess and surprise assaults as the Viking forces capitalized on their mobility and the disunity among the Saxon kingdoms. Guthrum's military curriculum was punctuated by strategies that included swift raids, open field battles, and calculated retreats. It often left his adversaries reeling. The success of these strategies led to significant Danish victories, allowing Guthrum to expand his influence across large swathes of England. However, in 878, the satisfaction of conquest turned into a monumental challenge at the Battle of Edington. Having launched a surprise attack on King Alfred of Wessex during a crucial festival, he sought to dismantle Alfred's power by taking advantage of a moment of vulnerability. This decision initially paid off, allowing Guthrum to temporarily wrest control from Alfred. Nevertheless, Alfred demonstrated remarkable resilience, retreating to the marshes of Somerset, where he regrouped and executed a guerrilla campaign, harassing Guthrum's forces and devising a counter-offensive strategy that ultimately led to a decisive confrontation. The clash at Edington was a pivotal moment in Guthrum's military narrative. Despite his army's previous successes, Alfred's tactical genius unfolded during the battle, resulting in a significant defeat for Guthrum and his forces. The aftermath was a retreat to a fortified stronghold where a siege would define the next chapter of his journey. Isolated and under siege, Guthrum faced the reality of his situation, which culminated in negotiations with Alfred that reflected the shifting tides of power in the region. Guthrum's surrender marked a profound transition not just for him, but for the wider Viking presence in England. Under the terms of the Treaty of Wedmore, which emerged from this surrender, Guthrum was compelled to undergo baptism, aligning himself with the Christian faith, a decision laden with political implications. This baptism was not merely a personal transformation, it was emblematic of a new era where Viking leaders increasingly engaged with the burgeoning Christian political structure of England. He assumed the Christian name of Ethelstan, signifying a new phase in his leadership, a blending of Viking identity with the socio-political realities of his Anglo-Saxon subjects. Post-surrender, Guthrum returned to East Anglia, taking on the mantle of a leadership as a Christian king. His tenure was characterized by a duality. He ruled with an understanding of both Viking traditions and emerging Christian ethos. His reign was marked by a conscious effort to integrate the diverse peoples under his control, seeking to balance the expectations of his Christian subjects with those of his Norse followers. In this milieu, Guthrum's rulership saw the establishment of boundaries delineating territories governed by Viking and Saxon laws alike, which underpinned the foundational framework for the Danelaw, a territory in England where Norse laws prevailed. Guthrum's adaptation and the political savvy displayed in navigating between cultures were instrumental in securing relative peace and stability in East Anglia. He minted coins during his reign that featured his baptismal name, underscoring an identity that intertwined both his Viking heritage and his adopted Christian faith. The transition from a warlord to a king embodied a peaceful domain, represented a significant achievement indicative of a ruler who recognized the shifting socio-political climate post-confrontation. Despite occasional raids from other Viking factions in the late 80s of the 9th century, Guthrum managed to maintain a semblance of order and prosperity throughout his rule, serving as a bridge between two worlds. This integration allowed for a growth in trade and interaction among the peoples of his territory, enhancing East Anglia's standing in the region. In his role as a mediator between cultures, Guthrum's legacy became one not merely rooted in military might, but in governance and the harmonization of traditions that often clashed. Guthrum ruled until around 890 when he passed away. His death marked the end of a life that had traversed the landscapes of military ambition and cultural integration, Following his death, historical records indicate his burial in Hadley, Suffolk, where the echoes of his reign could be felt long after.